All right, let's see.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
I am doing well. How is it going with you?
It's going pretty good. I stayed up so late last night, or at least late for me. I'm like an old woman. I have to go to bed early.
Why'd you stay up so late then?
I was just talking with Rose Wrist on stream, and they're pretty fun to talk to. As well as I was just doing like streaming with Dylan Burns and like a few other political people. So
I see.
responsibility, things to do.
That's fair. Okay. Give me 1 second. I have to set this camera up.
Okay, I'll
Oh
add.
my goodness. My my computer melted down and well my solid state drive did, and I had to redo all of my OBS settings, which was such a pain in the ass. I couldn't believe.
That's brutal.
Okay. Um let me up your volume. All right. Well, I think we're good.
Cool. So I've actually watched like a decent amount of your stuff. I first came in contact with
Oh,
you.
really?
Yeah.
What's your favorite video of mine?
I liked watching you debate Vosh, and then I saw you um, just like talk to a few other people. I'm pretty sure I saw you debate like Big Papa Fascist, or I think that was it, yeah. And in
Okay,
general.
okay. More like the debate content versus the scripted stuff.
Actually, I also, yeah, not so much of the scripted stuff. I also saw you talk with Money and Macro, and I really like Money and Macro, so that was also cool.
That's great. Yeah, no. Money and Macro was he we started at similar his channel's always been bigger than mine if I'm not mistaken, but his growth has been like so much more exponential. He did a couple economics explained response
Right.
videos that just went totally viral
That's how
and
I found
he
him.
just it just totally blew up, and he's a really he's a really good. He recently announced that he's quitting his job and he's going to
Oh
try
shit.
doing content creation full time, which is really exciting for him.
It's a big step.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Uh, well, all right. You want to get into it? I've got
Yeah.
questions.
Go, shoot. Give me your
All
questions.
right. So my audience is you know what? Actually, I don't want to make any presumptions. I'm not sure how familiar my audience is with your content in general.
Hmm.
Uh, but in general, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Taftaj or Taf or April, whatever's easiest. I started like posting sexy pictures on the internet maybe like 2 years ago, and I got pretty popular for that. People have been just like fantastic in their responses. So that was really nice. But I've wanted to branch out a little bit. So I've been doing some political discussions on this platform, twitch.com, just trying to really share different and interesting perspectives and have good conversations with people. I've followed Twitch politics for like a long time, and I think it's like an entertaining sort of drama-filled soap opera. But I think that it could also be a good platform for having some interesting and meaningful discussions.
For sure. So Have you always been into politics?
Yeah, I would say so. When I was like 13 or so, my mother got me a philosophy tutor, and I just became like super obsessed with learning as much as I could about politics. And I've sort of been everywhere across the political spectrum. Like when I first got into politics, I strongly identified as like a libertarian. And I sort of like drifted left and was like interested in left libertarianism. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that I've just like, as I've gone through, I've slowly like adapted and refined my positions on things philosophically.
Why did your your mom got you a philosophy tutor at 13? I think I took my first philosophy course when I was like 20. You were doing philosophy when you were like a teenager?
Yeah, so she just like hired she was going to school for philosophy when I was 13, and she just like went up to one of the students in one of her classes and was like, "Hey, you're like really good and you give all these interesting insights in class. Can you tutor my kid?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure. Why not? I'll take the money." And so I got him. I also got a tutor in logic, and both of these like tutoring relationships just, they fueled a really strong passion for ideas. And so, like in high school, I founded my school's philosophy club, and I ran that for like 4 years. So I've always been like sort of interested in ideas, but always from like a casual or like amateur perspective, right? I don't have a degree in philosophy, so it's always been just like personal research.
I see. Well, what did you end up going to school for?
I got a degree in business.
Just like generic business, or was there like I did finance specifically?
I did business administration, and then I also got a minor in data analytics.
Okay. And do you do that as a job now, or do you just create content full time?
I just create content full time. Yeah. It pays
Did
much better than anything I could do.
well, I'm sure the business degree comes in handy, right? Managing all of your different accounts and everything, and revenue streams and whatnot.
I'd like to think so. I think like the biggest thing is just like some of the financial literacy that I got from it.
Did you ever did you ever use your degree? Like, did you at any or, did you just create content like right when you left school, or did you at one point have like a full time business job?
Well, I did like sales for a little bit, but I just graduated like last year, so I haven't
Oh, I
had
see.
like
I
a
see.
lot of time to try to do much in business.
Well, I mean, I mean, yes and no. I mean, you probably have a business, right? Like, you probably
Right.
have like an LLC and everything, and I assume you don't just create content. Like, you probably sell merchandise and I don't know, probably a set of other things, right?
I don't actually sell merchandise. I don't know. I think that
Wow,
like right
you got to get on
now,
it.
I totally should. I think the problem is that like I don't have a lot of like parasocial investment. People aren't like super attached to me as like a brand so much as they are just like enjoying passively consuming stuff that I put out. And so like one of the reasons I'm interested in Twitch is sort of building up that personality element and trying to really connect with people.
I've always thought I've always had like a disproportionate amount of when I say disproportionate, I mean like disproportionate to broader society. Do you know Bad Baby?
I do.
Okay, I've always had a disproportionate amount of respect for this girl because she's I think the number one example of she basically was a meme, right?
Hmm.
Like, Cash Me Outside, the Dr. Phil appearance and everything. But she's the number one example that I can think of absolutely optimally capitalizing on your meme status. Like, she was like a millionaire when she was like 15 or 16 or something, just from essentially continuing her brand and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I mean, look, obviously she's kind of weird, but I mean, that's impressive, right?
It's incredibly hard to do. Like for every bad baby, there's 1,000 people who got meme status and never went anywhere. So
Exactly.
yeah, I
You
think it's
know,
extraordinarily impressive. If I knew how to do that, I think I would write a book and become a millionaire that way.
it'll be interesting to see, like, I don't know. She's not. I don't like follow her every single day or anything, but like every like 2 years, I'll hear of like a big career move she makes, like going from like she did rap for a while, and I think there was she had another like spurt of news when she started doing OnlyFans,
Mhm.
and so it'll be interesting when she's like 35. You know, like where is she now, kind of thing. You know, maybe she'll be running for president or something. But
Right.
that'd be interesting. But okay, so you've always kind of been interested in politics. Very similar here. I had interest in politics at a relatively young age as well. I think I was probably like 11 or 12 when Obama got elected the first time,
Mm.
and that was kind of the introduction to a lot of young people's sort of interest in politics was when Obama got elected in general. And so so I discovered you when you appeared on Destiny's stream and subsequently his YouTube channel. I kind of watched more of his YouTube stuff, and you described yourself in that discussion as center right. And so, what is that? I think people would be surprised to hear that, right? Obviously, typically, if you had to guess, right, someone who does like, does like OnlyFans content, something like that, right? You might assume that this person would typically be left leaning most of the
Mhm.
time, right? And so, uh, what does it mean to be center right to you? Were your was that kind of your upbringing? Like, were your parents the same way? Where does that come from?
Well, I think there's like some data to suggest that like your political leanings is just fundamentally based on like your intuition about what's morally correct, and it's like very hard to like get someone out of that moral intuition once they've like grown up and had their personality solidified. So I think that's probably part of that. When I say that I'm center right, what I'm really trying to communicate is that if you were to take like an average of like all of my positions, I'd probably be center right. I think that it gets confusing because I'm not a conservative. I'm not interested in conserving the status quo, perhaps. And so when I talk about being right wing, I'm really talking about these sort of fundamental values. And I'm talking about, building a society or a culture that is based on preserving these fundamental values that I think make someone right wing. Um, and that might involve like fundamentally going against some of the conservative party wishes. And it also means like I have, in a sense, I think a lot of freedom to not align myself necessarily along partisan lines because I don't identify as a conservative per se, and because my philosophical reasons for identifying with the right wing are a little bit more esoteric.
And so, do you make it a point to vote? Like, who do you tend to vote for? Or I actually don't know how old you are. How old are you? I don't. Maybe you've not even gotten the
I'm
chance, or maybe
21.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you've had like a couple election cycles. Did you vote in them? Like, what politicians do you tend to kind of align with?
So I voted for the first time in 2020. In 2016, I was too young. And I voted for Biden just because I was so frustrated with Trump's response to the coronavirus. But also, in general, I think that Trump, he had this like potential to be a very strong president, particularly if he were to follow up on promises to, drain the swamp, to become an anti corruption candidate, and to really, I think one of the qualities of right wing ideology and politics that I find attractive is this focus on order, or more specifically, formalism, right? So when you really formalize the processes by which a state is governed, you can crack down on corruption and create more order through that formalism. I think that if Trump were to become the candidate of that kind of order and to crack down on some of the, shadowy dealings in the government that, that mechanize how we order the country, I think that could have been really interesting. But, of course we didn't see that. Trump didn't really do much to purge corruption or to increase transparency in the government. He didn't drain the swamp. And so the most interesting potential part of Trump was not really a promise that was delivered on. And after his disastrous, I think, response to the coronavirus, not taking it seriously, not encouraging people to take it seriously, I voted for Biden. And also, economically, I think I tend to fall a little bit more left wing. So, like, I think the infrastructure project that the Biden administration pushed through was probably a good thing.
Right, and that makes sense. And his COVID bill, you might like the COVID bill as well, but Trump did a couple COVID
Like the
bills
child
also.
tax credit, that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against some of those things. Although many do, I suppose. So everyone's got their own preferences. But so you it really almost, it sounds like, and I assume so in terms of social policy. I don't really know how you talked about economic leanings, but like in terms of social policy, would you, gay rights, trans rights, access to abortion, stuff like that? Would you think you'd fall more left or right?
I think I'd fall more left, honestly. And like one of my big frustrations with like the conservative movement is that they tend to attach themselves to sort of like toxic ideas sometimes. So for example, like racism, sexism, homophobia, etc., which in fairness, I think the left often wields these labels as like a cudgel to destroy their political enemies when it's really not applicable. But, there is a grain of truth, and that's that sometimes the right attaches itself to these ideas as a way of just opposing the left by any means. And I think that's probably not very productive. I don't think that that's really in the spirit of pursuing true virtue. And I don't think it's, something that I would personally subscribe to. Like, ultimately, if you're a homosexual and you're attracted to someone of the same sex, I don't think that there's like anything inherently wrong with that. I think that the right wing response sometimes is this understanding of homosexuality as something that degrades social institutions, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. So they would say something like, well, family is a powerful institution that's important for keeping order and passing on traditional ideas, including like moral virtues onto people, and homosexual people don't engage in that family building. But I don't think I don't think it logically then follows that they are then like making traditional family building worse for heterosexual people. So I think that I think the logic is just flawed here, and it's based on sort of like not really critically thinking about the ideas. You can be a homosexual person or a transsexual person and, be really dedicated to sacrificing and making meaningful change and helping your community or your family.
I see. Okay, so socially left, economically left, but the center right labeling is more so, like you said, it's a very esoteric labeling. When it sounds like, based on like a sort of common parlance political spectrum, you'd be center left, but you're labeling yourself to center right, almost more basically philosophically, in general.
Yeah. So I think the left is like really, it's centered around ideas of like individualism and this sort of assumption that like human nature is fundamentally good. And the more we remove barriers to what people are allowed to do, the better life is going to be for people. And you see this in the extreme with like anarchism or libertarianism, this idea that we just unconstrain people, things will be good. And I think my philosophy is sort of fundamentally opposed to that, where I think that, culture and institutions, but also individuals, we require a lot of active effort to do well in life, right? We need to always prevent ourselves from backsliding, morally, ethically, or politically. And so we need to have formalism, we need to have order, we need to have institutions like the police or the justice system. And we can't just, deconstruct these things endlessly. Even like, gender roles. I think we need to have strong gender roles are the kind of thing that help ground ourselves. And, the same thing with traditions in general, like especially religious traditions. They're ways that we ground ourselves. And humans are storytelling creatures. And the way that we learn how to act ethically is by understanding and communicating traditional stories. And so we have to be heedful of those kinds of things.
That's interesting. I think a lot of people would feel the opposite though, right?
Mm.
A lot of people might say that, oh well, actually it's right wingers that want to empower the individual to act sort of as positively freely as they can, right? By taking away sort of the barriers of government and regulation.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like the sort of libertarian perspective. But I think what we see when we allow people to, you know, act with total liberty is what becomes advantageous to do in the free market is to engage in quite immoral actions. And so, to lie and to cheat and to steal. And so, what we really need is these like barriers to prevent people from engaging in that sort of behavior and prevent that behavior from being solidified culturally as the kind of thing that's acceptable.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I would just say that a lot of it seems like to me though you could frame that as a right wing or a left wing idea, right? So for on one end you might say by that logic we might label the Soviet Union as like a right wing government because they had an incredibly rigid hierarchical orderly structure of doing business and engaging even on an individual level. But obviously there's many leftists and tankies that would very much disagree with that characterization.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also like the ideology of the Soviet Union. We see in like Tsarist Russia, you have the capitalist who owns the factory and the czar who runs the state. And, ultimately the state is controlled by like this small group of people. And then post revolution, the ideology is, making the claim that the state is now controlled by the people, by the collective. And, it's the claim is that hierarchy is broken down. But in fact, this is, plainly not true. This is a complete lie. Ultimately, the state is being run by Lenin and a small group of oligarchs. And I think that like fundamentally, you see this in every political system. Ultimately, everything is going to be run by these small groups of oligarchs, and right-wing ideology is really about recognizing this and working within that understanding of distribution of power, resources, money, and so on. Versus I think the left wing sort of deludes itself into believing that you can achieve this egalitarian or free hierarchy-less society. And I don't think that that's really plausible. And so the right wing is more about understanding human nature as this tendency to reduce into hierarchies.
Okay. And so I guess in that vein, is there a society or a state in history or in the modern day that you would label as closest to your ideal?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. um, I think that in some sense I'm inspired by like the work of I think it's Robert Heinlein. I just know his last name is Heinlein, but he wrote like Starship Troopers. And in his writing, his society is one where it's run by people who have proven themselves in you know in dedication to the state and into sacrifice for their fellow man. you know it's people who are truly dedicated to virtue and to the people around them that are allowed to rule. And so I think that's quite an interesting idea, um, that I find inspiring. I'm not sure if there's like any one state that's really, struck me. I think that there are interesting ideas throughout all of human history. I think, for example, like China right now is doing interesting things politically. I think that the fact that China is so authoritarian and yet has managed to deliver year after year so much prosperity to its citizens is perhaps a good indication that the Western conception of liberty as the fundamental axis by which progress, growth, and success is gained is maybe not so accurate.
I can understand that. I think that most political thinkers would probably say that liberty has its costs, right? So, that, naturally, a more free and liberal society is also going to come with it some additional responsibilities and externalities, right? So, for instance, the classic trade-off might be liberty and security, right? The idea that we might live potentially in a more secure society if we had a lot less civil liberty. But that's a trade-off that many people kind of and many governments end up making, right? So, and it seems like in America we fall more on the side of, well, liberty's a bit more prioritized than security. Although, of course, there's many people would have disagreements in that regard, right? Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and stuff like that. These people, obviously, there have been examples of individual liberties that have been curtailed or eroded away by even the U.S. government. But then there's many other examples to counter it. All is to say that certainly we live in a more free society in America than in China. I think a better example for you to look into might be Singapore,
I was about to mention
because
Singapore. I just know less about Singapore.
yeah, I think Singapore is they're an interesting example in the field of democratization. I took a course on democratization. It was one of the most interesting courses that I had taken, probably right up there with like Latin American politics when I did my political science degree. And one interesting concept in the field of democratization, I can't recall what like the name of the concept is, but it's this idea that basically people of a government are actually very much willing to tolerate an authoritarian government, um, if that government is good at what it does, right? If that government provides good services, and if that government fundamentally isn't like incredibly corrupt and distributes sort of the economic surplus equitably and reasonably. And the number one example of this is Singapore, where the government of Singapore will literally throw you in a jail cell and cane you if you spit gum on the sidewalk, right? But basically, there's not a lot of uprisings or anything like that in Singapore, and actually, they get 90% turnout in their elections. They tend to vote for the ruling party. Now, obviously, there's a lot of chicanery in their elections. Don't get me wrong; it's not the most free and open election in Singapore, but the government tends to have a very high approval rating because basically the Singaporean government does a really good job at managing the economy and distributing gains to people. They have an incredibly socialized housing, very robust public transit, very reasonable and equitable healthcare system. I mean, their unemployment rate is like 1% or something like that. It's like it's a pretty interesting society for a lot of reasons. I figured that would be a pretty, maybe perhaps at the very least a less polarizing example than China. I
Yeah,
would say.
I mean, think about it like this, Econoboy. Pretty much everything around you in life that works is created by an authoritarian system, by a private company, right? Your toaster, your car, your keyboard, your computer. And it's created at like a much lower cost, much more efficiently than, the public government can do. So like if you look at healthcare, when, the ACA was passed into law and a website was put up for it, the website crashed almost immediately when people were, struggling to get access to it. And so the Obama administration reached out to Silicon Valley tech companies, and for a fraction of the cost and in a fraction of the time, they were able to create a much better system for running the website. And I think that like
Yeah.
this kind of efficiency that autocratic systems have is a distinct advantage, but like you said, it comes with costs, right? So like it's not it's not like holy or unadulterated good. When you have more authoritarian systems, there are issues with them.
I think there's probably a distinction that's valuable with the company example, is that um, companies have a hierarchical top-down structure. That's true, but that doesn't mean that the process isn't necessarily collaborative, and it doesn't mean that they're not responding to external forces, right?
Hmm.
So, for instance, take a company, right? A company isn't similar to like a government, right? Soviet Union versus like a company. There's that book out there that I'm probably going to eventually make a response to, called The People's Republic of Walmart, which essentially makes the case. It's actually a relatively short book. It's I think it's like 100 pages or something, and it basically makes the case that actually most of society is centrally planned. It's just planned by companies instead of the government, right? And they use the example of, look at the size of like Walmart, right? Walmart as a company has like a similar like output to the country of Belgium or something like that, right? And it's a an autocratic system, but the people of Walmart and the managers of Walmart are responding ultimately to market demand and supply, an external force that they can't really have, an incredible amount of control over on a macro level. And they're ultimately also accountable to external investors, the shareholders, who can move and leave as they see fit, right? So I think there's a valuable difference between a hierarchical company where a manager tells an employee what to do and an authoritarian government that's attempting to plan an entire economy. Now, to be fair, that's not what China does, right?
Hmm.
It's just to say that there's probably a difference there that's worth pointing out. Not least of which is that obviously the workers of an autocratic company, you could say, can leave that
Hmm.
company and go work at another company, whereas the constituents of an authoritarian government, oftentimes, depending on how authoritarian that government is, have quite a hard time leaving that government.
Yeah, I would say that's a significant, barrier to the success of, authoritarian countries is that, if you evolve the guns and you can trap people in your borders and force them to, work for you, then, you don't have a strong incentive to make sure that life is really good for them. And so, really, it seems like there's this tipping point where once your population is educated enough and capable enough of leaving the country, or at least causing significant stress for you if you were to try to like clamp down on them and engage in quite extortive practices, then that kind of authoritarian style where you just put a gun to them and tell them to grow crops or whatever, that style is no longer going to be so effective. But just because of that ability to monopolize and engage in so much force and demand people to do one thing or another for you, I think that's a big barrier to making authoritarianism work as a viable political strategy. Though like I said, it varies depending on what your population looks like.
It sounds like you take the human nature argument against anarchism quite seriously.
I would say so, yeah.
And why? So that's one. I've been trying my absolute hardest to uh, find like a good example of like a good, well educated anarchist to talk to about anarchism. The only example everyone mentions is Zoe Baker on Twitter, but she's quite busy and also a fair bit bigger than I am, so I can't get a hold of her. But I'd love to talk about anarchism with someone. Typically, the human nature response, the responses I tend to hear about, oh, people say anarchism can't work because of human nature, but actually, human nature is to be very collaborative. It's one of the reasons that we had advantages to other species when we were evolving, was humans having a sort of an innate ability to work together, right?
I mean, I agree, absolutely. And the point of collaboration, ultimately, I think, is the development of a state, right? The natural evolution of that is to create an organized system of power, which I would say that, like, the purpose of the state ultimately is to encourage virtue in the individual, and the individual then encourages virtue in the state. So it's reciprocal in this way. And that would be, the evolution of that kind of collective impulse in people. And so the idea that you would, because people are collaborative, you could just have a non-stated society. It seems sort of antithetical to the point of collaboration in my mind. If humans are indeed collaborative, then it makes sense to develop large systems of collaboration which encourage people to be the best versions of themselves.
And you think that the encouragement of someone to be the best version of themselves requires, I tend to agree, I'm just asking the question, requires a monopoly of violence, like an institution with that sort of power.
Yeah, I would say so. Because without a monopolization on violence, we see de-evolution into like infighting and into competition over that, over violence as a resource, right? Different people try to gain monopoly over the violence, and that happens through violent means.
I see. Yeah, I think this is a standard argument that I would tend to agree with the idea that I think it's almost necessarily the case that like a truly anarchist society would see more violence and sort of personal instability, which most people probably wouldn't be willing to trade for. But
Hmm.
that's just me. Got to talk to I've yet to presently I've yet to talk to an anarchist that was I mean, it seems like quite an incoherent ideology, just to be honest, right? I need to find like a good I need to find like one of the good anarchists to talk to.
I
you
mean,
know?
there's someone in my chat right now. His name is Last Username, and he's an anarcho-capitalist. He might be interesting to talk to. He's definitely like
Well,
pretty well read.
well, hey, last username. I'm down to have a good faith discussion. Just hit me up on Twitter, I guess, and we can go from there. Anarcho capitalists are, um, I tend to believe I tend to agree with the leftist anarchists, which is that anarchism is a leftist ideology, right? It does seem to be the case that anarcho capitalism is a bit of an oxymoron, but then again, maybe last username can convince me otherwise. Maybe he'll ANCAP pill me at the end of the day. But you mentioned you wanted to pick my brain. You can turn the tables on me now about. You mentioned the Nordic economies, economics in general. Let's do it. What did you want to talk about?
Yeah, so my understanding of you is that you're a pretty big fan of sort of the Nordic model of economics. I I'm a layman, I'll admit. What draws you to this model, and what do you think are its main tenets?
I would say, yeah, I think I don't know if I would I generally would call myself a social democrat or a oh, got a follower, that's interesting. I would generally call myself a social democrat or uh a liberal or something like that, or just a democrat in American context. And with regard to the Nordic model, I would say that yeah, I'm a pretty big fan, especially like Norway. And I think there's just a lot of stuff that America and the Canadian government, American government, and many other governments across the world can probably take from the Nordic model and implement. I think America is just sort of a classic sort of juxtaposition to the Nordic model because we do a relatively small amount of the types of things that the Nordic governments do. Some key characteristics of the Nordic model economies and governments would be they're relatively transparent and open democracies. When you look at the sort of democracy indices that get made by various organizations, it tends to be that the Nordic countries, if they're not the top five, like they typically make up five of the top 10. Uh, they typically make up five of the top 10 sort of countries in terms of how democratic they are. And so that's probably a key component. I think democracy does a pretty good job of sort of ensuring that the economy works relatively well for everyone and ensuring that the systems by which you're governed are actually relatively quality and corruption free. Obviously, it's the more eyes that are looking at your actions, the harder it is to be corrupt. I would say generally is the case, right?
I think so.
And so I think that's probably a key part of the Nordic model is to be relatively democratic and open society. In terms of economics, I would say that the standard things would be a relatively sort of progressive tax system, and a relatively progressive distribution of those taxes in the form of generally pretty broadly, not necessarily completely universal, but like fairly universalized government benefits and services in the form of healthcare, public transit, social assistance if you need it, education, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, like, one of the reasons why Nordic countries do so well, that you see pointed to, is the fact that they tend to score quite highly on happiness indexes as well. But I've heard the critique that culturally, in a lot of these countries, there's just a lot of stigma around, you know, admitting that you are having difficulty or rocking the boat too much or, being too like ostentatious about, problems or success that you have. So I wonder, do you think that the data suggesting these countries are much happier than average is do you think that's a real reflection of better quality of life? Do you think that's biased in any ways by you know, cultural ideas about how you present yourself? What do you think?
I think it's a pretty relevant sort of chicken or egg type problem when you look at the happiness indices. I think it's a relevant statistic because the truth is there's probably some component of culture, like you're mentioning, and there's also probably some component of the services themselves. So I think that the government has shown an ability to set culture to a certain
Mm,
extent, right? So it seems to be the case that if the government does something broadly and that thing tends to work out decently enough, that people who are otherwise hesitant tend to be okay with it after a while. So, for instance, right, um, in America, what we saw wasn't necessarily the most decentralized. Every civil rights movement is decentralized, but in terms of moving public opinion, right? So there was the decentralized sort of gay rights movement that happened, all throughout human history, leading up to, I think it was like 2013, I want to say, was when Oberfeller v. Hodges happened and gay marriage got legalized across the country, or maybe it was 2015, and basically. You saw public opinion do what it did till there. Generally, over time, people got more and more favorable to gay people, homosexuality, and gay marriage in general. But then you start to see like big political figures come out in favor of gay rights and gay marriage, right? Barack Obama in 2012, Joe Biden around the same time, Hillary Clinton around the same time. Um, and you started to even see some local Republican politicians doing the same thing, which sort of aghast the national party, but was, were national news stories in their own right. And I think that you can certainly see that when government officials and government in general, that Supreme Court case, when that stuff started to happen, you started to see like a much broader support of gay marriage and sort of gay rights in general, right? For instance, Trump, when he was running in the primary, he ran in the primary as like one of the most pro-gay and trans Republicans like in history, right? He
mhm.
said that, yeah, Caitlyn Jenner could use the women's restroom at Trump Tower. Like I wouldn't care. He spoke positively about Planned Parenthood. He didn't really, he didn't have like a particularly anti-gay agenda when he was running for president in the primary. Now, obviously, he ended up being quite a standard Republican in that regard, relatively anti-trans and gay. But it's just to say that that Overton window seems to have shifted to a significant extent when even the Republican side seemed to drop that as an issue, at least temporarily. And so with the Nordic economies, it's hard to say if it's just like their culture that makes them like maybe less likely to report being unhappy or more happy in general, or if it's a lot of their government services. People tend to link the two. But I think there's probably something to be said that these societies have what I would call a relative lack of precariousness in general.
Mm.
Something about the United States is just so precarious to many people's finances and economic situations, right? If, for instance, right, if you have a coverage gap in your healthcare, say you're leaving a job and you come into a new job, and you've got like 1 week where you're off your health insurance, and then 1 week where you signed up. Say that in that week, you get in a car wreck and have to get sent into the hospital ICU for a week. Well, all of a sudden you've got like a $70,000 bill that you're responsible for, right? And this is an example of precariousness that just doesn't exist in the Nordic economies and most of these sort of European style universal healthcare systems that is relatively positive, right? Or for instance, if you lose your job in America, right, you might be able to qualify for unemployment benefits, but that's only if you get laid off, right? If you get fired for quote unquote cause or you quit on your own, you don't qualify for unemployment benefits, which basically ends up meaning that only about a quarter of people that leave their jobs end up actually qualifying for unemployment benefits. And that's not really good for the economy in general. Like, if people want to leave their jobs because they hate it, or because they, I don't know, want to, I don't know, mental health break or like whatever it might be, it's not necessarily the worst thing just to qualify everyone for unemployment insurance for a temporary period of time. Those are some examples where it's, the Nordic economies, I think, do generally a pretty decent job of taking care of, everyone, and trying to ensure that there's a relative sort of equitable opportunity to move up and out of different income spectrums in society.
Yeah, I agree on this point about stability. I think an important part of a functioning economy or culture is just the confidence that people have in things not, falling apart. And that is another, frustration that I have sometimes in discussions with much more libertarian people, especially on the anarchist side, where without, a centralized body of law, of justice systems, or, enforcement of contract rights or whatever, without that consistency, there's a lot less confidence in the economy or in any, deal that you're going to be making. And so people are just less likely to take risks or engage in innovation, those sorts of things. So I do appreciate that about the Nordic countries. I also think that I appreciate the sense of like collective working towards something. So like Norway, I think it is. They have the social wealth fund, right, with their oil money.
They do.
Right. And so I think there's this real sense of like working together and trying to help each other and, care for people outside of yourself that I think is valuable. And it's something that unfortunately Americans, I think, sort of lose in, the hyper individualist pursuit of your own wealth and your own success. I think that once you learn to live for, things outside of yourself, that's really the essence of living a good life and a virtuous life. And so I think that you can reflect that more in your economics and how you run a state, and it's going to, significantly improve the well-being of its people. So I do think I'm partial to the Nordic model in this way, in both terms of stability, but also in terms of just like taking care of its people.
Yeah, for sure. I think that on the left end of that sort of philosophical paradigm you established, I think there's also an argument of general sort of freedom and that precariousness that exists, not in necessarily the Nordic economies, that does exist in more the American or maybe Canadian economies, to a certain extent, less so on the Canadian side, is kind of negative towards individual freedom as well, right? The idea that if you're tied to your job because your job provides you health care, how good is that even for the labor market, right? How good is that for businesses?
Right. Makes it hard to
It's
switch jobs.
Yeah, it's probably not, right? And it's probably better to just collectivize basically the payment for those types of services, because ultimately we all have health care, right, that we need, whether it's just checkups or whether it's sort of some more serious healthcare ailments. And it's good when everyone has access to them. And in the case of healthcare, geez, it's just a lot simpler, right? My God, it's an incredibly complex web of different health insurers and all this crazy billing nonsense. You go to the right hospital, but the doctor themselves isn't covered under your plan. It's like, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. I mean,
Hmm.
just put us all under the same umbrella just to make it a little bit simpler. That would be my preference. But that's one example of, I think how the Nordic economies do it right in general. And there's differences between like Finland and Sweden and the different Nordic economies, but broadly they do seem to have this sort of very similar governing structure altogether.
Right. And also the sense of like, you know, clear and open politics, right? As far as like anti corruption and making sure there's like, a formal ordered system from which power derives. And part of that is just having like open elections, elections where people understand the rules and how people are getting elected. They're not opaque. They're not, obfuscated. They're not, the kind of thing that allows people to engage in sort of corruption or dark money
Yeah.
or backroom dealing. I think that's also very important. And I think that, that focus on like order is something that I see as really a right-wing value.
Well, plus also I think that the rules of their elections just seem fair, right? I think one problem, I think one serious problem with the American election system really is the Electoral College, right? That you've
Mhm.
got, because, stupid, dumb, idiot conservatives, and I have no other way to put that, might say, oh, America's not a democracy. And I really hate when I hear that because it's a really stupid, idiotic thing to say. Because ultimately, you kind of backed yourselves into two potential corners. One is, do we just not believe in democracy? To which some conservatives would genuinely say, well, no, I don't believe in democracy. Like, I believe in sort of a Roman Republic style system where sort of an elite group of people rather have control of the system. The issue with that is that that's not what America does. The Electoral College is not an elite group of 500 people that independently vote for president. It's a group of people that ceremonially vote for president based on typically essentially almost entirely based on the popular vote of the places where they live. And so that's not even the system that we have. Typically, the one that conservatives who are anti-democratic would agree with. And two, I think that most people would intuitively, because of 100, the local elections tend to be democratic in nature. State elections tend to be purely democratic in nature. Elections for most federal offices tend to be purely democratic in nature. It's really just the presidential election that has this weird sort of quasi popular vote system. And so I think intuitively, most people, when they see someone who's lost the popular vote win the election, most people's experience tends them towards like, oh, well, this is dumb, right?
Mhm.
It's like a bad thing, unless it benefits their side, which is, of course, why I think most Republicans are pro Electoral College. But,
Mhm.
in general, I think that that is a problem because I think that when you've got a situation where millions of people are casting votes, I'm voting for this person, right? And most people or the plurality of people vote for person A, but then person B ends up winning because of a relatively archaic way that we elect our president. I think that that does make it harder to inspire people to go out to vote in the first place, and it does erode faith in the institution of voting in the first place, right? Because if you vote for someone and it turns out your vote only kind of matters, right? I can see why voting itself is called into question and why many people in America, at least, don't feel necessarily we don't have the same turnout rates as many other countries because our vote isn't as necessarily actionable when we're voting for president. And so, yeah, I think that's a pretty big issue, though I'm not sure how you feel about it.
Well, I think the system is just complex. It's opaque and difficult to understand. But can you imagine if Republicans won the popular vote year after year and yet lost the presidency? I mean, you would hear nonstop about like the real American's choice for president and the failure of institutions to deliver on that. So I think you're definitely right when you say that like because it happens to favor them, they, are a fan of this system. But,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think it would have been the funniest thing in the world if Trump lost the Electoral College but won the popular vote,
oh
like
yeah.
because Biden won the Rust Belt or something. Like if something like that happened, because Trump has no shame, right? You
Mhm.
know for a fact, like the next day, the Republicans would be 100% anti-electoral college, right? And there'd probably be a sizable portion of Democrats who, like, there'd be kind of two main groups. There'd be the group of Democrats who are all of a sudden are like, maybe the Electoral College isn't so bad. And then I'm not sure how much bigger this group or smaller this group would be, but I would certainly be in it, which would be like just laughing our asses off, basically. Like, this is hilarious. What have we been trying to tell you for the last 2 decades? But rules are rules, right? America's not a democracy. We're an electoral whatever the fuck republic, whatever you might have it, and so that's why Biden's president now. But fortunately for Democrats, I guess it tends to be the case that when we win a presidential election, we tend to win the popular vote.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not super attached to democracy, but I am attached to, clear, understandable, and consistently fair processes of, electing power or distributing power throughout a state. And I think once you have those clear processes where the people can see who is really governing and they can hold those people accountable, that's really the essence of, good governance. And democracy, and especially free and fair elections, is one of the strong ways in which you can do this. I think one of the problems in America is that many of our sources of power, the most powerful institutions, that determine how laws are made and how laws are implemented, are not easily understood by the general population. And, one example of this is just the Electoral College. People, not necessarily understanding how the Electoral College works or how it affects votes, someone in California's vote versus someone in Montana's vote, how those votes are going to be weighted differently depending on the population of their states. I think that's difficult to understand. But another difficult thing to understand is the influence of money in politics and the influence of culture on politics. When Twitter is able to sort of act as this public square for which, ideas are discussed and debated, same thing with YouTube or Twitch. And when these platforms are able to, give discretion on what sort of ideas are discussed at all on them, in general, I think that these platforms are reasonably fair. I'm not, a right-winger who thinks that, like, it's totally off the rails as far as censorship. You see people on the left and the right are getting censored. But ultimately, I do believe that when it comes down to an edge case issue, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Twitter, or Twitch, they're not going to fall on the side of the people that are advocating against the company's interests, right? They're going to fall in the company's interests on who they censor or ban from the platform. And that's a very dangerous thing, right? That's a massive amount of potential influence that these tech companies have on our democracy and the way that, we're governed. And that's a dangerous thing, right? It's dangerous when the rules of politics are governed by these actors that are not even officially understood to be related to politics. And so the inability for people to really understand who is governing them and who to hold accountable, I think, is a severe issue for really, steering your country in the right direction. It's hard to tell, what exactly is going to be the consequences of that. But ultimately, I think we can only try to put ourselves, in the best position we can. And that starts with, really formalizing and making sure that there's, free and fair interaction between sources of power, systems of power in government. I wonder,
Right.
did you see by any chance the movie Don't Look Up?
Oh man, it sounds really familiar, but I guess I didn't see it.
It was just released. It was like Leonardo DiCaprio. It's basically about climate change. And in it, these scientists discover that a meteor is heading towards the Earth, right? And they go to the president, and the president, refuses to help them because it might look bad politically. And, big tech refuses to help them because they have another idea that might generate themselves more profits, right? And so what we really see is an interaction between these systems, the systems of politics, the systems of science, and the systems of media or of big tech and how all of these systems have different desires that, they all align or don't align to create like the inevitable outcome of not being able to stop the meteor, which is an analogy for not being able to stop climate change, really. But I think that like the movie is, it's incredibly like progressive, obnoxiously so. But I do think it hits on like an important piece, which is that like a lot of these systems that are outside of politics have enormous influence on what does or doesn't get done. And that can be, a big obstacle towards human success or human flourishing.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess, in general, would you say that, so you would say that the economy should be not necessarily seen as purely like a tool, but rather your sort of morals should reflect how an economy is structured.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
And so to what extent, like, okay, for instance, like if I don't know, like I'm sorry, it's hard to come up with an example, but like we make these kinds of decisions in economics like all the time, right? So obviously, an example might be that, if one country legalized, like say the United States, right? Say that we legalize child porn in the United States. We might have a flourishing child porn industry that makes the GDP go up by 0.1% or something like that. Like, oh, we'd have
Mhm.
more economic growth than we otherwise would if child porn was legal. But obviously, we make the decision that the market of child porn is not valuable enough, and the sort of obviously the implications of legalizing child porn are so destructive for society and cohesion, and so abusive to obviously the victims of that market, that it's illegal, right? But to what extent would you say that that would apply to other things? So, for instance, a lot of people might say that a lot of vegans might make the case that, and I don't know if you're a vegetarian or vegan, but a lot of vegans and vegetarians might make the case that, well, the meat industry is so abhorrent, we should just make it illegal, right? We should transition away from meat in general, and this would have pretty grave economic consequences and probably pretty grave consequences for people's diets as well. Obviously, many people sort of on a staple basis just eat a lot of meat. Do you think it's rational to really govern an economy that way in all cases?
In all cases. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the goal of an economy is not GDP, it's not number go up. When you see, I mean, what is GDP really a measure of? It's a measure of all the things that people have bought and the prices people bought them at. So when you look at like a truck, right, that is a 2014 model and it sells for $10,000. And then, the 2016 model, which sells for $14,000. And you measure like the number of these trucks that are bought in a country, year after year. What you're really measuring is like how much more people want one truck over another. And GDP on a whole is really a measure of like this collective want for products and services. And the goal of, I think, human flourishing is not the endless sating and creating of human want, right? But really it's, like Buddha is saying that like want is suffering. I really think that we need to eliminate or transcend that want. And, part of that will be in doing things which create or add to GDP. But the goal of an economy is to, create human uplift, not to endlessly create want. If you create an opium den, that's going to be something that is highly desired. It's going to bring in a lot of money, but it's not going to add to human flourishing. So I think you have to distance, the sort of simple pleasures, the engaging in things that you desire from the things that are ultimately good and what the things that should be promoted in an economy. And sometimes that requires, sacrifice of material things.
Right, but you would say though that there's a balancing act, right? So I established a balancing act with my point of view. Obviously, child porn's illegal, despite the fact that if it was legal, maybe we'd have like a little very slightly higher GDP, right? And so similarly, um, you would say that on the opposite case, one example might be that, and I don't know how you feel this way. It's an interesting question. Is like alcohol is perhaps a socially destructive thing, right? Same thing with like maybe cigarettes or marijuana or something like that. It just depends on who you ask. And we might say that the potential societal consequences of making that illegal are worse than making it legal. So we might as well tax and regulate it. Um, would you have a similar view, or would you take a more sort of hard stance that, no, 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 like, cigarettes are bad for your health, alcohol might be bad for societal cohesion, therefore it should just be illegal?
No. Yeah, okay. This is a good way to ask this question. No, I don't think necessarily that we should be, looking to just like outlaw things that we think might have any sort of bad impulse, right, or effect. I think the goal should be to really create a culture where people are not necessarily reaching for these things in the first place, and where people are feeling accountable for the people around them, and they feel responsibility to like help people, stay away from addiction. I think that should ultimately be the goal. At least that should be like the first line defense against these societal ills before we, try to ban them. So, banning, I think, is the banning something, I think, is an option as a kind of last resort if something is deemed to be so destructive that, even letting people get it at all in the first place is going to cause serious problem. And you see this with things like, opioid addiction, where you can get addicted off of, your first attempt at trying something. That might be the kind of thing that is so destructive that we can't rely on just sort of like cultural pressure to stop people from engaging it just because engaging in it one time might, totally destroy your life. But for most things, I think you have to allow people the freedom to fail a little bit and to be, helped by their community to avoid that failure.
And so here's an interesting question. What do you think of, did you hear about New Zealand recently banning cigarettes?
I didn't hear about that. That's interesting.
So what they did was basically they banned cigarettes for I think it was for maybe current adults or something like that, and the window rolls forward. So the way it'll work is that like basically by like 2048 or something like that, cigarettes will be totally banned or something like that. Like so slowly over time you have to be older and older and older to buy cigarettes. So like right now maybe it's 20, but in 10 years you'll have to be 30, and in another 10 years you'll have to be 40 to buy cigarettes, and so on and so on and so on, until eventually basically no one's allowed to buy cigarettes.
I think that's interesting. I don't know. I think that like culturally, cigarettes are already on their way out, right? Just in the U.S., they are. Um, and I think that's like a great example of how you don't necessarily need to put in these like strict measures to stop people from engaging in cigarette use if you, build a strong enough culture that's not encouraging them.
That's fair, but I think at that point, though, I think that the what people should realize is that the culture, like the anti-cigarette culture across basically every country, kind of originated from the government, right? From the government engaging in public health research and putting that research out there, engaging in a lot of advertising campaigns, don't smoke, it's terrible for you, raising sin taxes, making it
Hmm.
inconvenient to smoke. Like, I've never I mean, I'm 25. I haven't been to a restaurant where you can smoke in it. Like, I don't even. I think one time in the last 10 years there was a restaurant that I went to with a smoking section, and it was like, oh, that's weird. Like that's interesting, right? Because it's just so rare, and you're not even allowed to smoke in public in many cities nowadays. So there was just a ton of policy that led to kind of a broader culture of, yeah, I don't really care for, you know, people smoking around me or smoking in general.
Hmm.
Right?
And I think
So
that's a good thing, right? The state is encouraging these behaviors or discouraging a certain behavior, but they're not necessarily reaching for an outright ban immediately. And that's what I really mean when I say that, like, a ban should be the last line of defense for something that is deemed to be, just wholly destructive. But, if the role of the state is to, encourage human flourishing, that might take the form of something like vice taxes, where you're increasing taxes on cigarettes to discourage them, or you're helping to fund research which accurately represents the dangers of something and proliferate the information on the population, so your citizens are well informed and they understand the risks of engaging in a certain kind of behavior. I think that's quite noble, and that's quite a good goal of the state to do those sorts of things. I don't think that necessarily banning things outright is always the best move, just because with a lot of things, you can engage with consuming them responsibly. For example, like alcohol. Lots of deaths, happen as a result of alcohol or drunk driving. And it can be a very destructive substance, but it can also be the kind of thing that you can consume responsibly. And really, what we need to be doing with people is not treating them, like children who are totally incapable of making their own decisions, but instead like adults who just need to learn lessons and grow and be able to engage with, potentially dangerous things in mature ways.
So, what is something in society that is not stigmatized or is not stigmatized enough that you feel like should be stigmatized more or in general?
I mean, frankly, probably pornography. Um,
Wow. Hold on. I'm gonna let that. I have to let that sink in a little bit.
yeah,
It is interesting that you would say that.
right. Not only pornography, but the current dating culture, where the current hookup culture, where people are sort of, they see their partners as just like a means to an end of getting off, right? But the goal is not necessarily the development of like, strong, lasting familial ties. I think, pornography and the consumption of it and the pursuit of these like very base sort of, pleasures is not something that is probably good for our culture. And that's not to say that I think pornography should be banned or no one should consume pornography. But I think people need to be responsible about the way that they do it.
What do you think about the UK's? Do you know about the UK's regulation on viewing porn?
I don't know. Isn't it like children can't view it or something?
Well,
You have to have like an
I
ID. I don't know. I've heard memes about this, but I don't know the policy.
yes, as far as I'm aware, I don't. I actually don't know if it's illegal for a child. I don't know if it's illegal for minors to watch. Is that actually illegal? Like, I'm not sure, because every 14, 15-year-old dude is
Hmm.
probably watching porn. I don't know if they're actually breaking a law, though. So that's an interesting question. But with the UK, though, to get around this, basically what you described, as far as I'm aware, you have to enter like a credit card number or like an ID number before you can like enter into a porn site, which some people have said like, well, this is going to lead and perhaps probably has led to an explosion of VPN usage in in the UK. But in general, is that an example of something like that that you would be maybe favorable towards?
I mean, I'm not sure I totally understand the policy. What is the purpose of like requiring people to enter, you know, this number?
The idea would be that most children don't really have like a government ID or
Okay.
a credit card that they could. Obviously, they could always steal their parents or something like that. But that's kind of a perpetual problem with online purchasing. But it's just kind of an added barrier to prevent children from, from viewing porn, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds like an appropriate solution. Um, yeah. I mean, that's definitely part of it. But I think that like pornography is the kind of thing that is going to be very hard to stop people from consuming through like bureaucratic laws, right? Or um, through laws in general. What you really need to like encourage people to stop it is to have like a cultural movement around its consumption and understanding its effects more. Just because if you create like laws to prevent people, people are just going to like, skirt those laws with a VPN or whatever.
That's fair. I mean, I guess that makes sense. So, you know, so I guess pornography is a decent answer. I don't know if I agree. I mean, I guess I can certainly. I think porn is probably something similar to like cigarettes, or maybe that's how I would view it in my
Hmm.
mind. Where like I think obviously it's the case that you can abuse you know porn similar to how you might abuse drugs or something like that. But you're right that of course it probably doesn't make sense to make it illegal or anything like that, right? It's just a matter of, how can you teach kids and young adults to engage with that sort of phenomena in a responsible way, right? In such a way that I think stuff like abstinence only stuff, like pretending these things don't exist, probably doesn't work. It's just a matter of trying to teach them, like, you know, pornography is very unrealistic a lot of the times, right? It doesn't like don't use this as like a reflection of what sort of regular sexual encounters are like. You probably shouldn't watch this every fucking single day, right? Kind of things, just sort of basic lessons, similar to how you might teach kids how to interact when there's drugs at a party and stuff like that, or whatever might whatever have you, I guess, in general.
I mean, I agree absolutely. I see it like, you know, like consuming alcohol can be a really bad thing if done irresponsibly, but it can be fine if you understand how to do it responsibly. I think pornography is the same way. And I don't necessarily like, I don't think you're a bad person if you run like a brewery, right? And I don't think you're a bad person if you create pornography. But
Sure.
people can consume it responsibly, and there does need to be like a conversation about what it means to consume responsibly. I also think that like in a way, porn has changed a lot, and like mainstream porn, where you have like these studios, tends to be some of like the most coercive and you know the worst porn conditions wise for just the people like involved in its creation. And so like the decentralization of porn and the moving of people to OnlyFans, I think has ultimately been like a really good thing for curbing um, some of these like really nasty conditions for people in the industry. Like you hear these horror stories about like, girls getting high on meth just to like get through a shoot. But when you put like the power in their hands to sort of like, set their hours and get paid themselves and not have to deal with these like, skeevy industry, movers and shakers, that can be, a good thing, allowing people to really like choose who to support and to, you know, work one on one with sex workers to like consume their pornography when they believe it's been like ethically sourced. I think
Yeah.
that's, a movement in the right direction.
Yeah, there was a I was talking to a friend and we were talking about prostitution, and from my point of view it was like it's like I just don't understand why would porn be legal but prostitution not be legal? It just seems really weird to me, right? And that's always been kind of a position that I've had. Like I just it just seems weird that one would be legal and not the other, right? And what she actually mentioned was like, well, um, actually, there's a lot of decent enough evidence that brothels and like organized porn, whether legal or organized prostitution, whether it's legal or illegal, is can be relatively coercive and bad for the people involved. And so that's why a lot of like European countries, it's a lot of times it's legal to buy sex but not sell it. So kind of a decriminalization kind of thing. A lot of the times it's legal to buy and sell, or I'm sorry, it's illegal to sell sex but not buy it. But a lot of times it can be legal to sell it and buy it, but brothels are illegal. So if you just wanted to sell sexual interactions on like an individual level, that's fine. If you want to buy sexual interactions on an individual level, that's also fine. But like the organized prostitution is illegal. I think that's how I want to say that's how the UK and Canada do it, to try and avoid that sort of that's a very similar probably type of coercion that you might get with organized prostitution as you get with organized pornography.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think navigating the ethics of pornography or prostitution is definitely a difficult thing. Um, it requires tact. And in the case of pornography, it's one of, these good examples of the kind of thing that can really be reevaluated, but, is not necessarily the kind of thing that you would need to ban, I don't think.
And so, what do you think is the best TV show that's happening right now? Not necessarily on the air, but just in general, what's the best TV show that's sort of currently being produced?
You should watch The Young Pope if you haven't already. It's a fantastic TV show.
I've heard it's a good one. It's basically about this guy who falls like doesn't he fall like ass backwards into being pope, and he's kind of skirts all the general pope rules. It's like a bad boy pope or whatever.
Um, Maybe. I think it's about this. It's about a pope who he does sort of fall into it, and he's a very conservative, almost reactionary pope, and he, you know, goes on this like crusade to like exorcise the homosexuals from the church and to like bring, a real like sense of fear of God back into the church. And he does seem to be able to like work miracles in ways, right? He does seem like divinely, chosen by God to be in his position. And I think it's a fantastic and fascinating show because it just so completely flaunts um, a total rejection of the typical values that you'd see in like Hollywood productions, where it's a very like explicitly religious show. It's a very explicitly like anti-progressive show, and even though it's not something that like I wholly agree with the perspective of, I think it's a fascinating insight into a different perspective on the world you don't see often in media.
That makes sense. Is it a like an HBO show or
I think it's
who's producing it?
HBO. Pretty sure.
Oh, okay. I wasn't. I was like, who's producing this show? It does sound very interesting. You don't normally see. I guess the main character is like a super big homophobe, and
I mean, he's not like he doesn't like hate gay people necessarily, but yeah, it is like a reordering and like a restructuring of the church to like more traditional values. And like there's a gay character that he's like friends with and he's like quite close with, and that he allows to like continue to be in the church because he like, you know, doesn't engage whatsoever with his own homosexuality, which I think is
wow.
fascinating.
What a show. That does sound like a really unique show
Hmm.
in terms of the current media landscape. I don't know if I'd like it. I haven't seen it, but um, for me, the number one show, it actually recently ended, so I'm cheating. But I promote this show because no one has seen it, but it's such an incredibly good show. Okay, to you and to the chat listening, it's on Hulu. It's 3 seasons long. That's the entire series. Okay, and it's 25-minute episodes, 10 episodes a season. So there's only like 12 hours of this whole entire show from start to finish. It is called Mr. In Between, and basically it's a show about an assassin from Australia. That's all I'm going to say. It's won like every single sort of like all the like Australian TV awards you can win. This show's won it. Here's the most fascinating thing about the show that's not plot related. The guy who wrote the show, he's like a 50-year-old Australian dude. He has done nothing else. Nothing. He's never written anything else. He's never acted in anything else. He's never done any other storyboarding. But he wrote and is the main star in this show, despite never having done any of that previously. At least not that I can find. His IMDb page is blank, besides anything not related to this show. And so, super super fascinating. Show for a lot of reasons. Guy just comes up with a banger idea of a TV show and then decides to be the main star in it. Does a really good job. I thought that was pretty funny. But um, Taftaj, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think that's all. Thank you so much for talking with me. I definitely think that you seem to know so much about economics. It's refreshing to have someone who has just really grounded like political insights. I do think that like we have just such like different approaches to politics, where you have like very grounded sort of economic prescriptions for people, and I don't necessarily have those. So I think you definitely give me a lot of good insights to consider.
Heck yeah, economics is fun, and that is kind of the goal of my channel. Was just that basically when I left grad school, I had a lot of free time, nothing really to do, and so I figured, hey, nobody in Twitch or online politics really tends to talk very, very much in a decently in depth way about economics, and so that was kind of the goal of my channel. But then again, you've seen like Money in Macro. He has a very sort of he has a much more he doesn't really do debates and stuff, but he just does like the scripted stuff, and so he has a very educational channel. Um, I was originally inspired to do videos from watching Unlearning Economics, who is
Mm.
quite a bit further left than I am on the economic spectrum, but his videos are typically pretty good from what I can see, from what I've seen, I should say. So there's some good economics content creators out there, but yeah, you're right. It does tend to be either like surface level or typically like focused on. It's like let's talk about if trans kids should get puberty blockers. It's like, oh man, this is like why are we talking about this so much? A lot of other issues to talk about, I guess, right? But um, no, I thank you for that compliment. It was definitely fun talking to you, and have a good have a good. Are you going to stream the rest of the day, or what are your plans the rest of the day?
I think I'm going to continue streaming. I'll probably take like some callers and just chat with people, maybe play some Minecraft. Do you play video games at all?
I am a bit of a gamer. So when I
A
was
bit
in
of a gamer.
when I just a bit of a gamer. So when I was in college, I played. Well, when I was in college and high school, I played an insane amount of Hearthstone because Hearthstone was incredibly easy to like. You could kind of play it in the background.
I've
You don't
also
have to
played
put
a
like.
ton of Hearthstone, for the record.
Okay, well, what was your peak rank, Taptage?
Oh, not that good. I didn't get to
Okay.
legend, unfortunately. Um,
I grinded it out, secret paladin to legend one season. I was like, you know what, this is the season. I'm gonna get legend, and just played like 12 hours a day for a month, and eventually got legend. And then I was like, never again. This was not this was not worth it.
it's
Um,
very grindy to get to that point.
it is,
Because
but
every
I
deck
played a
is
bunch of
like,
Hearthstone.
if it's like a 57% win rate, if you play enough, eventually you'll get to legend. But yeah.
Yeah. No, it was tough back in the day. I think it's actually a lot easier to become legend ranked nowadays because that was
Mm.
back before you got like star bonuses, sure. Like you could start out at like rank 10 and then you could go to legend if you got high ranked last from the previous season. But I think the way it works today is you if you get legend in one season, you start out at like the equivalent of like rank 4 or 5. So you get advanced a lot quicker. And the reason that's a lot better is because it's a lot easier is because if you were legend in one season and then you get pushed back to rank 10 and the season starts, well, everyone who's ranked 10 when the season starts are all the legend ranked players from the previous season. So it's not
Mm.
easy. Like it doesn't become easier because you're lower ranked. And so it was yeah, that was a pretty big grind. I think I eventually stopped because I didn't even have time for Hearthstone, but I think I stopped playing Hearthstone. I had every character gold, and I had probably like 15,000 games, something like
Wow.
that.
That's
So
incredible. So did you play with the Mysterious Challenger? Was that the card that was in Secret Paladin at the time?
I believe so. The one that pulled out like like one of
Yeah.
every secret or some
Yeah.
shit like that.
You just look like a
Yeah,
Christmas tree.
yeah, that was my super sweaty season because I typically didn't like to play super duper try hard decks, but I was like, you know what, I'm trying hard this season. I'm getting I'm getting legend. My favorite decks to play just for fun were probably Mill Rogue. That was like the funnest deck of all time in Hearthstone. Mill Druid was really fun as well. And other than that, I would say I was more of a control type player. So like Freeze Mage, maybe like Hand Lock, Control Warrior, stuff like that. So I liked the slow games, like, game lasts like 20 minutes. That would be pretty fun. or like even combo decks. Like there was this one combo deck where you could literally get like you could get infinite fireballs from
Hmm.
Mage. It was like it was like a 2-turn like
It was with
12
like
card
Khadgar,
combo.
right?
Yeah, exactly. You Khadgar, get your cards cost one less, duplicate it, same turn, one less again, and then you've got like 2 cost, get all your spells back. You play your Archmage, cast one of them, and then it's just infinite fireballs from there. But super duper crazy precarious combo to pull off, and it was it really wasn't. It didn't win very many games, but it was really really
Hmm.
fun. Stuff
Yeah,
like
no, I
that.
always
But I guess
liked the Resurrect Priest and just like grinding down your opponent and just having like wave after wave of like taunt and healing and re-summoning your entire board. And they would have to like clear it out, and you just like eventually just like bring them to the ropes where they have like no resources.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was the fun part about Mill Rogue. Actually, was Mill Rogue was based fundamentally around Healbot and Gang Up and Cold Light Oracle, right?
Hmm.
And so if you're running against a control deck, you'd Gang Up a Cold Light, and then you just draw infinitely until they waste their entire deck. But the most fun matchups with Mill Rogue were against Face Hunter, which was
The
the most sort of
fastest.
aggressive. It was a very aggressive, very fast deck, and it was entirely centered around just, as you might imagine, just going face and killing your opponent in like 5 turns. And if you heal bot, gang up a heal bot, you can actually end up milling a face hunter because they literally just run out of run out of damage. Like
Hmm.
you've healed for like 100 health points, and there's not even any more damage left to give in the deck, and you'd end up seeing a lot of face hunters get really, really. I had more than a few face hunters contact me after games and be like, "You fucking piece of shit, fuck you, I hate you." And it's like, yeah, dude, that's what you get for playing such a friggin' caveman deck such as Face Hunter.
Yeah.
Very low class individuals.
Just a simple
Taptage.
club.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I'm a bit of a gamer. I guess you're more of a Minecraft person nowadays.
I guess so. I
Wow.
play a lot of like the Hearthstone Battleground. Their auto chess game.
I've tried to get back in the Hearthstone. Honestly, I just the games that I find myself trending towards nowadays are like RTS. So
Mm.
if I do turn on a game nowadays, it's oftentimes like Civilization 5, Democracy 3, but I know that they came out with Democracy 4. Um,
Econo Boy, do you want to play Civilization 5 with me?
yeah, we could
Please.
set it up.
I have like,
I'll warn you though.
okay, yeah, warn me.
I'll warn you that I am a. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm like an incredibly good Civilization 5 player.
I'm going to warn you.
So
I watched all of the Filthy Robot videos back in the day, so
okay. I'm gonna warn you that I watched all of the Filthy Robot videos back in the day, probably before you did. So I don't know, Taptage. You might be biting off more than you can chew. But yeah, now that'd be super fun if we could organize like like a streamer Civ 5 game or something like that. That'd be pretty
right?
fun.
Try to bully Destiny into doing it.
Yeah, I call the Inca Empire. That's
Okay.
my
I'll
my
definitely
main.
play Poland or Babylon.
Okay, well, if you're gonna try that hard, that's fair enough. But no, is it? Yeah, it's Poland, the one where they get the free social policy every single era. It
Hmm.
ends up being worth like 20,000 culture or something
Right.
like at the end of the game. Good God! All right. Well, it was fun talking to you, Taptage. Let's set that up. It sounds fun, and I guess to Taptage's, to the chat, I suppose I should say, if you're interested in economics content, just subscribe to me over on. I don't stream on Twitch actually right now. Thanks for the people that followed in the midst of the chat, but. I'll stream eventually, so if you want to follow, you can. But if you're interested in debates and discussions like these, or like scripted content, capital gains taxes, what's quantitative easing, should we do a gold standard, stuff like that, then I'm on YouTube at Econoboy, and it was really fun talking.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely check him out. He does really great content.
For sure. All right, have a good rest of your stream.
Thank you. You have a good day. Good stuff. God, he's fun. Should definitely set up a civilization thing. I think we're gonna play Minecraft and take callers. Okay, I'll be back. Oh shit. Thank you, Hoffel, for linking the Discord. Yeah, open mic. I had to shut the door. Bathroom. Because my camera like fucks with the lighting. If there's like light in the background, it'll make me look really dark. No good. We're also gonna take an ibuprofen. Oh, I have like the worst headache all day.
You know who I am, but I don't know who you are.
Bonjour. Hello.
Wow. Hello.
How's it going, everybody?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. How are
Good.
you?
I am
It's
too.
going great.
This is the best day ever.
Is this like your
It
third
is.
time streaming?
Not third. It's like 5th or 7th.
Okay. All right. So just a little bit of shame, all right? You gotta talk to some other streamers. I'll help you out too, but we gotta clean up this mess of an overlay and about section.
Okay, tell about section.
No, I like it. I got the Discord from it immediately.
No,
Nice and
don't
simple.
no no. This is bullshit. We gotta get you some panels for the bottom and show you and you need to get some mods in chat. Like you have the unfortunate benefit of having a
anarchy.
massive you have a massive audience, right? Like you have an audience that's like quintuple mine, and you have like none of the safeties up right now. Like you need
Yeah, that
you need
shows you.
some
That
mods.
shows that you don't need them.
No, you need some mods so that like you can protect yourself from TOS in your chat, because technically like you're responsible for moderating your chat.
What? Really?
Oh yeah, that's 100%
How
true.
do I get like
Oh,
an auto moderator? Can I get like a bot?
Yeah, so you can get CloudBot if you have Streamlabs. You can get Nightbot, another thing, right? So you can set up some bots that'll auto mod certain words. That'll help because people will come in and like let's just be honest. You're a trans individual on Twitch. There's gonna be some people that are gonna hop in and be like say some wild shit just because of that, right?
So true.
And like yeah, you're goddamn right. The ANCAP is advocating for policing the chat. This is private property, sir. Yeah. So like, what you don't want is like you don't want someone to come in with a hate raid or something where you have like 50 people trying to get around TOS and say the N word so that they can like report your channel or something.
Can't you throw up a follow filter so like you have to be followed to the channel?
I mean, 99% of the time, I would tell people never to do that because it's extremely difficult to grow your Twitch audience. That being said, only the top 0.5% of Twitch ever gets above 50 viewers. And you're kind of already in the top 0.25% of Twitch with your audience. So like you're not having a normal Twitch experience. But yeah, and like at the very least you should have a panel where like people can auto click a button and immediately join your Discord or your find your Twitter and stuff like that instead of copy and pasting a link tree.
Wait, okay. Linktree? Wait, repeat that. Sorry.
No, I'm just so like I'm not gonna like make you go to another channel, but like if you go to any other large streamer's channel, they'll have panels on their about page, which is what's showing while you're streaming. And like you can click the panel, right? Or click a link on the panel and it'll automatically like take you to their YouTube, take you to their Twitter.
Right, but my Twitter is like NSFW, so people are like, don't link it, otherwise you'll get banned immediately.
Yeah, I don't think you can link
and
that.
executed.
But here's the thing, and I'm not trying to scare you right now, but you're also really not supposed to have those things in link trees because people got in trouble for having their OnlyFans in their link tree. I think Amaranth and somebody else got in trouble because their OnlyFans was in their link tree. I don't know per se if it's actually an issue that your NSFW Twitter is in your link tree because I don't like that's a gray area. So you're not even affiliated. You should be fine.
Okay.
But yeah.
Fine. I'll add Twitter.
Yeah, mods are super important. You need to find people, but the problem is that you don't know who to pick as a mod because you've only been streaming for normal people don't have these problems. Normal people have like 1 or 2 viewers their first couple of months. Don't make me a mod. I'm not gonna watch your
Doesn't
content.
RTBA like mod for like almost every person in the politics space for some reason?
Be careful of people that mod for everybody. Be careful of the connections that you make. It's
He's a mover and a shaker.
I'm not a mover and a shaker. All right?
No, I'm saying RTBA is.
Oh yeah. Like there are certain people that like by making friends you will make enemies on Twitch. It's like if you make certain friends in the Twitch politics space, especially, you know, people will be like, "Oh, why are you friends with Demon Mama? She's this," or there's a lot of background.
I want to be friends with Demon
politics.
Mama.
There's a lot of background.
You've done it.
Right, exactly. But once you make
send
friends
the
with,
word
like,
out.
I'm just saying, like, you'll make friends with Demon Mama or like Banana, Samantha Banana, right? And then other people will hate you by virtue of being friends with that person, right?
Should I make last username a mod?
I don't know. You should. That's to you. That's you should. People that you trust in your community that are there often and that you believe will do a good job. That is a personal thing.
I'll make Bastiat a mod.
Oh my god.
Base.
I fucking hate Bastiat.
What?
You're a monster.
I can't believe that. How can you hate Bastiat? Come on.
I'm kidding. I hate everyone in the Twitch politics space is a socialist to me.
Wait a minute. Aren't you the guy who was on that Dylan panel? Or are you like the libertarian guy who was on that Dylan panel a while ago?
He was.
Well, I'm the
Oh my god! I thought you were just a
I'm-
random viewer like me. Dude, you are great. You have to keep going on those panels, okay? We need more non-dipshit right-wingers on these panels, okay? You are not allowed. Okay.
I'm number 2 in the rankings.
Okay, good. Who's number 1?
CTV.
Okay, you know what? I'll tip the hat to the wolf pack. That's fair. It's a fair call.
CTV's number 1, I'm number 2, and Destiny is number. Well,
You consider
technically
Destiny a
Destiny's the
right
champion.
winger?
Who, me? No.
No, okay.
Yeah,
No,
actually,
I can't
I should
wait to
clarify.
debate
What is
Destiny.
this ranking? I actually have no idea what you're referencing.
He made it public, so I'm now willing to say it. It's a background ranking for Dylan Burns. Hippy dippy.
Okay.
Oh my.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah, because we need more of you and less of Lecture Fan on there. I'm gonna keep it 100. All right, I am strongly onto the Lecture Fan as a character. Okay, it got called out early. I remember back in the Raj shows, Richard Lewis called it. Okay, and he was right.
I'm excited to debate Destiny because Destiny is afraid to debate libertarians and ANCAPs. Like he'll occasionally bring on like an extreme meme like TikToker or something that has like no understanding of economic theory and they call themselves like an ANCAP or something. But I'm excited because it's like Dylan Burns is the only way I actually get to debate Destiny because he'll refuse all debates from libertarians.
Do you know what it's going to be about?
Considering that he's a champion, he'll probably get to pick the topics.
Okay.
If I wanted to pick a topic, it would probably be vaccine efficacy. Or
really?
Yeah, I mean, I've debated like PhDs and I've debated like PhDs in biochem and talked to other people. Like I
guess I'm just kind of surprised. I would have expected it would have got. My assumption would have been it would have got like an economic thing or like a kind of like a size of the state kind of type deal rather than like a purely like scientific like descriptive claim. But no,
Yeah.
those debates are really interesting. I hope that would go. I hope that happens.
Yeah, no, he did one. I was invited to do that one with what was it? Doobie from the Politics Discord. Not the Twitch Politics, but the actual Discord, like with like 60,000 people.
Yeah, I can't believe he literally has a Discord /politics. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, he fought for it. Doobie's
right on
character though, so just
yeah, it's really tough. I'm not gonna lie, the VTuber makes it really hard to try and pierce through that veil.
Yeah, but welcome to the Twitch.
Thank you.
Taftash. Do you prefer Taftash or do you prefer April? Because Taftash is a damn mouthful.
A lot of people call me Taff. They just like shorten it.
Okay.
But like I even dated a girl for like a little bit, and she like called me Taff like all the time because she knew me from like.
Oh, I feel like that's kind of cringe. I'm not gonna lie.
It like sort of worked, but like
no, that's kind of cringe. That's kind of cringe.
Oh yeah, a chatter here just made a really good point. Have you talked to that Avi Burton guy, Scott? FL
Who?
Scott? I don't know who if I there's some guy. I'm not a lore master, so I don't know. But basically, there's some like apparently Discord debate community that I don't think is Doobie's.
Oh,
community.
Dr. Avi. Yes. So I attempted to debate Dr. Avi on the vaccine, and I gave him like 6 propositions, and he wouldn't accept any of them. And all he wanted to debate me on was, and I quote, the science of vaccine mandates. And I said, vaccine mandates are a question of ethics. What are you talking about? And he like wouldn't accept any proposition that I would give him unless it was one that he basically, because like he's a doctor, right? And so the problem with debating a doctor, if you're a layman like me, like, yeah, I went to grad school, but like not for a medical degree. And so the problem with that is that they will, because he's a part of like, he's real close with like the vegan gains community and stuff, right?
Yeah, and there's another vegan type guy who's really big in that specific Discord. I don't remember his name.
Like, they're really bad faith, right? Because like what they will do is they will agree to debate you only if they have the tools to moderate and mute you when they want, and then they will scream at you to answer like their loaded questions. And then like if you don't begin to answer it in the way that they want to answer it, they'll just mute you. Like it's a horrible community. And Dr. Avi's the same way. He's extremely bad faith, and the only way he'll debate you is if you give him a proposition that allows him to debate scientific articles, right? And then what he will do is he will obfuscate what the article is actually saying and just use his knowledge of medical terminology to attempt to make you look like an idiot. And then he'll say that what you're saying is not true because he's being pedantic with he'll be pedantic with like a term because he didn't like the way that you used a term, and then he'll just throw out a bunch of unnecessary like medical jargon so that like everyone is like, wow, this Dr. Avi guy really knows what he's talking about. And then like and you can't actually have like a substantive conversation with him.
It's a vanilla.
So like
Minecraft
I attempted
server.
to debate him given propositions that would, you know, actually allow us to debate ethics or something. And then
I'm launching it now.
It feels like there'd be a great benefit for Dylan or Prime K's or one of these people who runs like politics shows and debates to have a format where you have to enter evidence in advance for review, almost like a discovery process, so both people knows like what the other's coming in with. Just because it really feels like you just get into the Google game where you just try and find the first result that agrees with you. You throw it up, and of course, you know, in the middle of debate, no one's going to have the time to actually, or most of the time, no one's going to have the time to actually look through. And I feel like this happens all the time, especially in panel shows, where someone will read a quote from an article and then someone else will read like the next paragraph in the article, which directly contradicts like the quote the person was trying to take from before, and it just feels really messy and like ultimately not very useful.
It's like most of the science on vaccines and stuff, and you know, it's like there's so many unknown variables, and so it's really you can make anything out of it. You know what I mean? Like one could look at, you know, like this is Taft's or April or Taft's place. I'm not here to like get into the nitty gritty details of why vaccine debates are difficult. I just want to talk about the fact that we need to get you some Twitch panels and we need to clean up your stuff, girl.
Okay, sounds good.
Why I have viewers and you're just pointing to your boobs?
Let's be
Well,
realistic.
I mean,
That's fucked up.
I mean, it's
Let's be
true.
realistic.
Let's be realistic here. All right. Like I fuck like when I came on Twitch, like I languished in the pit of like 3 to 5 viewers for like 2 months. Now, granted, the more important reason you have viewers is because you're bringing a large audience. Like you have 100K people on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
You have like, and people are like, "Oh, I want to see that."
Well, as the only chatter in voice, I heavily object to that characterization of my fellow chatters. I'm here because it got linked in DGG, so, and I saw Boy's name, and I really like that guy.
Right,
so.
right, and that's also part of it too. When you have a political ideology that you express openly, I've made enemies of everyone. So you know, Destiny hates me by virtue of my political ideology, as does 90% of the Twitch politics space.
That's wild.
What's that?
That's
And also
wild
you
to
get
me.
censored. You get censored too if and I know people will be like, "Oh, you're being conspiratorial," but like I've done it before where like I'll put COVID in the title and then other days I won't put COVID in the title.
Yeah.
And if I put
like I don't
if I put
necessarily want
COVID
to
in the
talk about
title.
my COVID opinions always, because like I don't know, like
Don't.
the
Don't.
evidence for like
Literally,
effectiveness
just
of
don't.
certain things is like not great.
listen, just take advice from all of the most famous streamers ever and don't give opinions on these things. Like just play Minecraft and have boobies and win, okay?
Nice.
And do the occasional conversation. Because the moment you start putting out opinions like that, what you get is like the other day I put COVID in my title, right? Because I wanted to go through the Project Veritas leaks and like look at the actual records, you know what I mean? And like because like some of it seemed sus to me and some of it didn't, and I kind of wanted to see like what it was, and I put it in and it was like literally like God, what was it? Like I stayed at 5 viewers for like a half hour.
Holy
And
shit.
everyone right, and I average, like I usually peak at like 50, right? And I average like within the first half hour, like I'm usually somewhere between like 20 and 30 viewers. And I was in my Discord and people were like, "Yeah, I can't find your channel."
They're not like
In my
I don't have
Discord, they're like, "I
implants.
can't find
That's
you."
what you're asking.
Like I've searched you and I've been following you for 3 months and I can't find you.
Yeah, that's insane.
Right. So like there are certain things that you can do that will piss off the Twitch
Does
algorithm.
anyone know where to find my diamonds in Minecraft, by the way? Like, what level are they at now?
Yes, 11.
No, because it changed with the caves and cliffs. It used to be like
No
11, 12.
way.
Yeah,
They
right?
change. I'm out.
Because now it goes
Fuck
like
this.
negative, like really far.
That's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucked up.
Negative 48,
Negative 48ish. What the fuck?
right?
Dude, I feel like I'm booming now. Holy shit! What the fuck? Is this what it's like?
The world has changed around you.
Victor says if you start seeing nothing but deep state, you're getting close. Facts. If like it's like what you need to do is you need to listen real quick to the audio cues, right? And like the deeper you go, the more you'll just start to hear the Alex Jones. And like when you hear the Alex Jones coming from the deep yonder, you know that you're close to the diamonds.
So true. Diamonds of truth.
Dude, speaking of DGG, has anybody else been following the DGG offline chat today?
Mm-mm.
Holy shit, it's been going down. Has anybody in the chat seen this?
No.
The oh my man, I thought it feels weird and bad, but yeah, foreskin Forseekin incarnate. Yeah, Eris and Melina were arguing back and forth in DGG chat while like everybody else is literally typing to them. It was really weird. I think it's over now. But yeah, I think Tabor was
this is
there.
the real reason why I have such a hard time gaining on Twitch is because I don't engage with this shit at all.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Need to learn
God,
to love the drama.
that stuff was.
I can't do the drama stuff. Like we were talking last night about fucking God, what was it? The Pokimane stuff. And I was talking out of my ass because I don't really understand
Right.
DMCA that well. And I'll admit that. I'll take.
You'll
that
fit right in. What do you mean? You're right there.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Sounds
you
like you're
have to have
perfect
an
for the
opinion.
panel then.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I was really there for the
Based.
third topic. I could give a rat's ass about the first two topics.
I
mean, they're
have
dumb
thought
topics.
that we just like skip the Pokemon topic because I thought everyone would just be like, yeah, we agree it's bad. And then like conversation would have just like moved on.
Well, so so Hippy Dippy works like a wrestling show, right? And so when in the way and it's run intentionally to work like a wrestling show. If you go back and look at his overlay on his stream, like it literally says that it is like for entertainment purposes and not.
Yeah, he's like a huge WWE buff.
Right. So one of the things I understand about Hippy Dippy is that like I'm there as a heel, right? So it is part and parcel like of the whole theme that I am to be like I'm like the intended design of me being there is in part to piss off people, right? Because I'm not like no one's gonna
Big
listen to
Chad.
like an ANCAP and like be like, oh wow, this ANCAP has really good ideas on like Austrian economic theory and like discussing the issues of whether
I mean, compared to CTV, they might. Or sorry, compared to Lecture Fan. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disrespect the Wolfpack there. I misspoke.
Don't disrespect the Wolfpack.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I don't give a fuck.
I'm
in the Wolfpack, and I'm
really
like, dude, I
am
don't know
booming,
what
dude.
you
At
wanna
first,
do.
I don't know about Minecraft, and now I'm misspeaking. I really am like, damn.
I
But
feel
yeah,
like
it's-
Minecraft has changed so much. It's like messing me up.
I don't like. I can't. I don't know. My little brother plays the fuck out of Minecraft, but like I can't get into it.
Because I used to be able to like go down and just like strip mine and like get all the resources.
Honestly, it does feel like it's changed, but honestly, given the fact that Minecraft is like probably the biggest game in the world, I'm surprised they haven't done more. It feels
Yeah.
like these guys should be like it's like, remember when Among Us first blew up? Like, God, well, that was like 2 summers ago now, wasn't it? And like that first Among Us phase on Twitch, and the devs didn't do like almost anything for like months and months. Like how long it took for like the airship dev. Like, I'm really surprised they didn't try to go harder on that and like make a ton of money.
Yeah.
I don't really mind, but it's just kind of weird. I would have expected, like, if I made some, like, you know, like, mafia type game, and then it blows up and becomes the biggest game in the world, I'm announcing, like, a merch store the next day. Like, I'm doing an update every week, like, more microtransactions. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think the thing is like Minecraft is a comfort game for a lot of people. And so like the nostalgia factor is a big pull.
Yeah, that's
I
actually
feel like
probably a
that's
really
the
good
same
point.
way with like World of Warcraft. Like people play World of Warcraft like to fucking to like go back to a game that they loved when they were 12, and it's like, dude, it's been a bad game for like 10 years. Like, why are you still playing this? Also, I'm gonna tell you another thing about this, especially as a trans person. I don't know, maybe you're gonna get less hate on Twitch than I will. I get all the hate, but I regularly get people that attempt to get into my Discord to scream the N-word and then clip it and then report it to try and get my stream taken down.
That's
So you
crazy.
really shouldn't have a public Discord with a public channel that people can just hop into whenever they want to.
Oh yeah, I mean, I should just move us to like. I
Right.
have an exclusive channel. 1 second.
Wow, I feel so special.
Yeah. So like,
I mean,
this
you
is what
can-
I.
I feel bad for
use.
that other guy. He just joined and then
I
he
know you just
immediately
joined,
left.
but like, I feel bad for him. But like, I just mean like I'm just saying it's a thing. Yeah. You like, I don't know. Like maybe you'll get lucky.
I highly doubt
maybe
it.
there'll be less hate.
Highly doubt it. But I'm also capable of handling quite a bit of hate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
I know.
imagine that.
I'm pretty sure there's a way on Discord that you can make it so that in order to do things in a server, you have to have a verified phone number on
Right.
the account.
I might
That's the
have
best way to
that
just.
as my setting.
Okay, yeah.
That's usually the best way to just shut down. That's the best way. Obviously, it hurts engagement, but like I know like LS and like Dylan both do that for theirs because they deal with a lot of.
Yeah,
like,
I do
bullshit.
mine. I keep mine moderation at low so that you have to have an email address, which tends to reduce how many people come in making like bot accounts. That is technically the best way to do it, but
Yeah, it's always a bounce.
yeah, but you know, my community is made of a lot of anarchists and libertarians, and so those people
So
are
they're
like, "You want me to
fuck
give
moderation?
They're like, "Well, not fuck moderation." They're like, "You want me to give a corporation like Discord my phone number? Yeah, you can fuck off."
Oh my god, I found diamonds. Holy shit.
Good chat.
That was the greatest moment of my life, just there.
Of your life?
No, yeah, I like when I was 16.
So many of
I
your
remember
exes are upset right now.
Oh yeah, true. My poor ex-boyfriends who couldn't satisfy me.
Yeah, the
Damn, coming in with the heat.
Right? I mean, when I was like 16, people were like posting pictures of me on the politically incorrect board, and I was like telling people to like. I posted like a picture of Hitler doing something to us and said like follow your leader, basically like telling themselves to like end themselves, and that was like my experience on the internet as like a teenager. Just like that sort of like super aggressive like fighting with people.
Yeah, even Google will sometimes require you to input a phone number in order to just create an account. Sometimes they'll, if you have an account on Google without a phone number, they'll constantly be asking you to. But sometimes they will just straight up require it to make it. Although I think I'm a little bit of a special case. I think like my computer or my IP address got flagged a long time ago for making like 30 different Gmail accounts to Banivate on Space Station 13. So I think they have some sort of algorithm because I used to be able to without a phone number, but these days I have to use a different service because anytime I try and make an email on Gmail, it'll ask me for a phone number, which I only have one of.
I think Facebook's really annoying about that. Like, I
Oh,
tried
gross.
to make
Who's
like an
using
ad on the
Facebook?
marketplace to like sell something, and they got like pissed at me.
Well, I mean, I feel like your first problem is that you're still using Facebook in 2022.
It's good for like I use it like Craigslist basically.
That's fair.
Oh, like the marketplace. My mind went to a totally different place. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm posting
That's fucked
personals,
up.
hookups.
It was like I was like, Jesus Christ. No, don't say that. Because loving trans women is peak reactionary.
It's peak based and red pilled
Okay.
and
Okay.
trad.
First of all,
It's Lindy.
people use this word reactionary a lot, and I think people don't understand what the word means, right? So if you're using reactionary in like a colloquial way as to say it's reacting to something else, that's not what it means. Reactionary is a Marxist term that means someone that is unable to be brought into a Marxist idea of thinking. So just understand when you hear left-wing people use the term reactionary, they are saying that you are unable to be programmed into Marxist philosophy.
Damn.
So
Fuck Marxists.
from-
by the
I feel
way.
like most people
Goddamn.
probably have no idea that that's it, though. Even on the left wing.
They say no one uses reactionary that way. Of course, it's the same thing with critical thinking, right? Right wingers will say critical thinking all the time, but what they're really talking about is dialectics, and it's pernicious because they no longer say rational thinking because they've rejected modernity and they don't even realize that they've done so. But yeah, it's like I'm not going to yell at a right winger for using the term critical thinking because I know what they mean. Like they don't mean like we need to fucking use deconstructionist philosophy to break apart institutions and then utilizing that deconstructionist philosophy maintain the contradictions. Like that's not what they mean. But also,
I mean, I think it's a balance because, like, you should try to avoid allowing yourself to be caricatured by your opponents or allowing yourself to, like, take on the identity that they're labeling you as. But you also have to use language in a way that, like, is naturalistic and understandable by people.
so like I'm not saying you're bad for using the word reactionary. I'm just saying you might want to make sure you know what it means.
You've made an enemy for life.
Dude, that's what I do. Like that's the only way I've been able to fucking grow an audience on Twitch is by making enemies.
Yeah, now my community hates you.
Oh no, don't hate me.
Yep.
Well, they'll probably hate me because I was on CTV's fucking stream and I didn't know I was on CTV's stream and I was looking at your Twitter trying to find out your political opinions and I was like, Jesus Christ, it's just
You got a lot
hot
to dig
pictures
through.
of her penis. Like, what is going on? And he was like, that's gross. And I didn't say it was gross. I complimented you, not knowing I was being streamed.
Wow.
I'll just throw that one out there.
You bow to no one.
You bow to no one? I bow to no one.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Lord of the Rings.
Side, nobody's on my I'm on nobody's side because nobody's on my side.
Damn, so true.
That's my favorite Lord of the Rings quote. Trent's knew what we're up. I love your Twitter, Taff. I think most people probably do. Or
I
they
hope
hate
so.
it with a seething hatred.
Yeah, that's gonna be a feast or famine kind of type deal.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a very strong reaction one way or the other.
I just wanted to find out what your political opinions were. I was like, I went to your Discord and I was like,
Same,
oh,
same.
she has
Yep,
nothing
me too.
linked. The only thing she has linked is her Twitter, and I'm like, okay. And I'm just like, dude, there's nothing political on here.
There was like a while ago where I was posting more political stuff,
Okay, well, I didn't go that far down the rabbit
like
hole. all right?
years back.
Okay, I'm trying to fucking prep for a debate, not fucking
Dude, I can't believe.
form a parasocial relationship with you. Like,
You should form a parasocial relationship with me. That's great.
only if it gets me views.
I can't believe Twitter doesn't let you like go to a specific like place in the history of an account. Like you can't go to like there aren't pages. You just have to keep scrolling. Why? God, I mean I know why, but I hate it.
Stop trying to justify myself, dude. I have said multiple times. I stun locked Joe Lewis, okay, on when he wanted to come after me because I was calling him a black nationalist and a bunch of other shit because he wanted to fucking get pedantic and tell me that I was. He called me a liar because I wouldn't. Oh my god, because on another Hippy Dippy panel, was it Hippy Dippy? I think it was Hippy Dippy on a panel. Anyways, I said that the kid from Loudoun County, right? That was like in a skirt in the bathroom or whatever, and that they were trying to cover it up because they wanted to make it like a trans bathroom issue. And I was like, no, he raped 2 people. And then he was like, you said he raped, but it's not rape, it's forcible sodomy, and that's not the definition of rape, and that makes you a liar. And like so like I was just like, dude, fuck this. I'm going into straight meme mode. And I just started fucking with him. And then he was like, I called him a fucking like a rape apologist. But I said like, you sound like one. And I was like, and then he was like, you can't call me that. And I was like, what did I say? I said, I was like, I didn't say that. I said you sounded like one. And he was like, well, you sound like a cocksucker. And then I was like, well, whose cock is it? Is it Blair White's? Because I'm down. And then he just like lost his shit. He was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
That's amusing.
It was fun. So I'm just saying, like, I've been down that rabbit hole on Twitch before. It's fine, guys. Like, I don't need to apologize for anything. The internet already knows that I'm a degenerate. It's fine. It kind of comes part and parcel with being an anarchist, anyways.
Yeah, I think it's important. You don't let society dictate to you, how you're going to live your life or your morals. You're not a slave to others.
I just do the exact opposite of what they want me to do.
Here's the ultra based, and this might upset a lot of people, but here's the ultra based take. All right. In my current stage of life, where I already have 2 children, the whole like with a woman that might want to have kids thing is like already like been there, done that. So the real hottest thing is not the fetishization of trans women. The real hot thing is that I don't have to worry about them ever wanting to birth children. Because I already have kids. I'm done.
Yeah, that is good. You don't have to worry about getting them pregnant.
Right. Well, like I'm not even like the getting pregnant thing, right? Because there's plenty of prophylactics. What I'm saying is like 4 years into a relationship where they're like, actually, I do want children. And then you're like, but we've been together for 4 years and said we don't want children. And they're like, no, 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 no. I want you to put a baby in me or this relationship's over. And you're like, what?
I think trans women are very into trying to have a baby over and over, but it's usually not
It's good
successful.
practice. Yeah, it's usually not that successful.
But
Someone
attempts are
said,
made.
hold on. Someone said liking trans women equals degeneracy. What? Look, society gets to define what's degenerate. All right. That's not me. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But at the same time, yeah, no, it definitely is. You're just going to have to bite that bullet.
I think that liking trans women is very ancient Greek and Roman pilled, so it's actually good.
I don't know if I want to go back that far, just because there's some other things that come with that when discussing sexuality that the
That are maybe
ANCAPs
not so
definitely
great.
need to steer away from. All right, there's enough memes. I don't need to be fucking pro ancient Greek sexuality. I don't need that clipped. All right,
You just have to take the good parts and don't take the bad parts.
like Christopher Hitchens' cafeteria religion.
Yeah.
Except we're engaging in cafeteria Greek and cafeteria Hellenistic sexuality.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really feels like, I don't know, it feels like there are many things that we can sort of take the good from, ignore the bad, like historically, but it kind of feels like that doesn't really happen anymore because as soon as we see the bad, we throw it out. Like,
Oh, it happens all the time.
yeah, I'm gonna forget the name, but the Cthulhu guy, the author, Lovecraft.
Oh.
H.P.
This
Lovecraft,
dude, yeah, this dude was a I did not know this for the longest time. This dude was a massive racist, not just like of his time kind of way. And a lot of like his books, like the like Eldritch horror, is explicitly based around like the like it's not even like he was racist and he happened to make these good things. Like a lot of his books explicitly like are about like analogizing like other races as like Lovecraftian creatures, but it feels like almost nobody like views like really, not even almost nobody. It feels like nobody like views like the idea of Lovecraft or Cthulhu as racist, because like we've been able to take the good from the bad. But these days, I mean, obviously I mean. It wouldn't be on this level, but obviously if someone did have the views of Lovecraft and did make books like that, like there's not going to be like some cult classic of that and then like a rehabilitation of that kind of subgenre. And I don't really know how to feel about that because I'm. Sorry, go ahead.
So it's a bit. I mean, the thing is that when you're looking at a culture that is, so I look at it like the way that I view some. Oh, you found more diamonds.
I found so many diamonds.
So one of the things that have you ever read the Three Metamorphoses, which is an excerpt, the part 2 of Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra?
Oh, I haven't. I read Beyond Good and Evil, but I had difficulty with Thus Spake Zarathustra when I tried to read it.
Well, he intentionally wrote it in like a it's difficult to translate because he was a not a cryptologist. I can't think of the right word, but he studied the prose of biblical and texts, right? And that's what he was a fellow of, right? So he wrote Thus Spake Zarathustra like an ancient biblical text on purpose. And so it's really freaking weird to read, especially when translated into English. But if you hold on. my co-host was calling me. I'll get back to him in a minute and hop off of here. But he wrote it like that. But the thing is that I think it perfectly describes the evolution of religious thought within society, because he basically has these three phases. And the first phase is the camel, or the load-bearing beast, right? And this is very your typical conservative, I would say, right? It is someone that has a deontological belief system for the most part, that is, carries on the burdens of society for future generations, follows the rules, etc., etc. And then there's an evolution of man that occurs from that to the lion that slays the dragon of thou shalt, right? And the lion that slays the dragon of thou shalt is like a metamorphosis, and in many ways I would say it's leftist in its way, because it is obsessed with freedom. It's obsessed with taking down, how would you put it? Like, it's obsessed with deconstructing the institutions. And the dragon of thou shalt is like a dragon with 1,000 scales, glittering gold of thou shalt. And it's, it's religion. It's tradition. It's the value structures of a society that have lasted for thousands of years. And it says, thou shalt do this, thou shalt not do this, right? And so the lion is kind of in that phase. And then Nietzsche argues that we should become a child. So I kind of look at it in that regard, that a lot of people are stuck in this lion that kills the dragon of thou shalt. The camel in Nietzsche and the transformation is not an evolution. What the fuck? Well, I mean, maybe my interpretation of Nietzsche's second is wrong. I don't think I'm that far off basis, but who knows? Maybe
It's
I'm
just
wrong.
like your opinion, bro.
I mean, I think what's really interesting about Nietzsche is his insistence that we transcend the moral dictum that's been put upon us by culture and make our own way in the world. I think that's really noble, to try to devote yourself to a conception of greatness. And I think that he definitely gets that right. But I think that what he might benefit from is maybe the more conservative insistence on anchoring yourself to a shared tradition, culture, or community. And
For sure. I'm describing Nietzsche's philosophy here, not mine. But,
Yeah.
But I mean, I would, the idea of saying that the transformation is a de-evolution, that's I feel like that's just a wrong interpretation of Nietzsche. No, I mean, Nietzsche is explicitly talking about the fact that, yes, he's sad. He's sad. I mean, that's why he writes the poem, of God is dead, not as a lamentation, right? But at the same time,
Love them.
he looks at it as inevitable, and to become the lion that kills the dragon of thou shalt, and then says that we have to create our own values as children, that we have to stabilize ourselves. He's not a nihilist in the way these edgy fucking 16-year-olds think that he is, right? I mean, so I agree with you to some extent, but I think you're taking it too far in the other direction. But what I mean to say is that these people, when you're talking about Lovecraft, or you're talking about these random things, I think a lot of people are stuck in this phase of the lion that kills the dragon of thou shalt.
Yeah.
Right? They're just looking for issues and oppression, or problems with the institutions, and that seems to be their goal, and they're very arbitrary about it, and it's very random, and it's very collective, and it's very viral meme based. And so the real reason H.P. Lovecraft hasn't been attacked is because there hasn't been a large group of people that have determined that that's who we're going to attack this month.
Yeah, I think it really does feel like a lot of the targets of cancel culture, it's really just throwing darts at a board as to
It really
what gets
is.
by and what
because
doesn't.
people have come after oh my god, now I can't think of who wrote the Lord of the Rings for whatever reason.
J.R.R. Tolkien.
They've come after Tolkien and saying that orcs are representative of black people, and
Yeah.
that has been a thing, even though Lovecraft literally did that.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to make
Oh god,
stretches.
the Shadow of Innsmouth with the dilution of the gene pool by the deep ones over generations. Oh,
That's
boy.
what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly, right? Lovecraft literally did that, and Tolkien didn't, right? But I mean, where there's maybe some subconscious bias thrown into that, and symbolically, that's almost impossible to know. and it may have had an effect, sure.
Yeah, the one chat I just see a chat. The deep ones are Welsh. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's a great meme.
There's an appropriate term, and it's called sheep shagger. Okay.
Wow, I can't believe you.
Damn, the
After I was
racism
standing
off the
Richard
charts.
Lewis,
Look, most
there's
people
a
are white. It's okay. You're allowed to be mean to white people.
That's true.
So
That's
true.
true.
the
You're not allowed to use a C slur.
Right.
absolutely true.
That's one step too far.
There's some amazing meme like where it's like a green text and it's a picture of like that. It's that one famous picture of Lovecraft, and it goes on the lines of, "Oh, time to do my 23andMe to prove my 100% Anglo heritage, 0.5% Welsh." I looked into the mirror as my eyes began to turn into fishly gelatin orbs. My skin burst to scales. Like there's some great meme about that.
Dude,
and
my
it gets to the
favorite-
heart of that race.
My
like,
favorite
racism.
thing about that whole like 23andMe situation is that like I'm descended from black slaves on my mother and father's side, but like I'm white, right? Like I'm white. But I love that as a weapon sometimes, because people will say in arguments, they'll be like, "Well, I'm descended from slaves," and I'll be like, "Me too." And they'll be like, "Not talking about this bullshit Irish stuff, blah blah blah." I'm like, no, like black slaves, like that's how long ago that shit was, dude. Is I'm white as the driven fucking snow, and I have black slaves on both sides of my family in America. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's really interesting how we like define
warrior gene.
Okay.
Oh god! Oh my god!
That's-
Please don't talk
That's
about like
not
the criminology
allowed.
dream.
How dare!
Like chat's gonna be full of 1350s
Jesus
in like
Christ.
10 seconds. Like, Jesus Christ, relax.
Yeah, that's way too close to the sun. Yeah, it's really interesting how like we like categorize like race based off of genetics. I mean, the most obvious example is right, it's like the one drop rule, where like someone who's like incredibly light skinned, like someone like Drake, we still consider to be like black, even though like arguably he's more white than black. But one really angry
Sean King. Sean King.
Yeah, or Rachel Dolezal. But one really interesting angle that I don't think enough people talk about, that I think is a really interesting sort of like wrinkle on that, is native tribes in America and Canada and how they define membership. For example, I think it's the Cherokee say that if you have even one single drop of Cherokee blood, then you are a full member of the tribe, absolutely, as much as any other person. And then there are other tribes that define their
That's
membership
political.
as being much more exclusive.
so-
I mean, yeah, probably.
It's political.
There's absolutely going to be other sort of implications as to why they're doing that. But I still think it's just really interesting to. I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. It's really interesting as a way to see like the way things could be, and just really like I don't know. It really makes me reconsider a lot of like my prior assumptions about like, well, if we were going to try to get to like a more like objective like classification of who is what race, if we could even do such a thing, what would that look like? And I just think
Bro,
it's a really
race is
interesting
just a
example of
social
that.
construct, bro. Come on, bro.
I mean, it's a little bit. It's a little bit of both.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's mostly political. That's what's
Yeah,
important
yeah,
to
that's
say.
probably
Like,
true.
especially when you're talking about the Cherokee, because you have a group of marginalized people that have had their. I mean, because the Cherokee is an interesting distinction, because the Cherokee actually had private property, right? The Cherokee tribe is very different from the majority of tribal lands, because the Cherokee attempted to assimilate into American culture in northern Georgia. Unfortunately, with the invention of the cotton gin, people like Andrew Jackson specifically deeply wanted that to be American territory, and they actually, and the Cherokee didn't fight via some like violent means, or like fucking try and do like a go against the state in that regard. What they did is they took it to the Supreme Court, and at first they had no standing in the Supreme Court, and then what they got is they moved in two white people to establish a post office in Cherokee lands, and then by doing that, there was a Supreme Court case that involved two individuals that were American citizens that had private property there and were owning and operating they were operating on behalf of the state a post office. And so they use this as a means to basically make their land private property, not just like nation's territory that could be negotiated in that way. And the Supreme Court ruled that that was the Cherokees' land and that they couldn't do anything about it. And then what happened is Andrew Jackson told the Supreme Court, well, try and stop me. And he told them, send in your marshals, is what he actually said, which was a joke because they didn't
Whoa.
have marshals. And so then
Oh,
he
okay.
forced the Cherokee to walk the Trail of Tears, forcing them onto other reservations. So the Cherokee have a unique claim to land in northern Georgia because it's not just a territorial claim; it's also one that was specifically protected by the Supreme Court, and one that was not just as a treaty but as private property. And so one of the things that the Cherokee have done is they've intentionally made it so that anybody that has even a teeniest bit of Cherokee blood, right, is a member of the tribe and is thus communally linked to that private property to try and gain political and influence and power over the time by virtue of swelling their numbers. And so that racial distinction has a lot of political connotations behind it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really fascinating. Thank you. I never heard about that specific case with the Cherokee land. Thank you.
I know way too much about politics.
That's fascinating. I mean, I think a similar dynamic happens around like Black identity in the United States, where there's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of incentive to sort of create these structures that reward Black identity in the form of like affirmative action and whatnot. And so people will, there's a lot of people who carefully guard Black identity and, who counts as Black or not Black, because it can confer, these sort of institutional, I don't want to say rights, but like privileges.
Oh
Yeah,
God,
it's really
Tab's gonna be canceled in 2 weeks. And with that, I need to go talk to my co-hosts, and I'm working on getting our Rumble set up and stuff. It was a pleasure talking to you, not in a blood sports arena where I'm forced to like come at people. I would love to have further conversations in the future if you ever want to do like a one-on-one or something, or talk about a specific issue.
Have you ever
Or
played Civilization 5?
yes, I will not do that on stream again because I am horrendous at it. I'm terrible at video games.
I want to put together like a Civ 5 game with some people because I was talking to a
That's-
Kana boy and he said he was interested. So
Look, this is what I do on Civ 5. I pick Maori, okay? And then I search for way too long for a place to settle, and then I get wiped out by like turn 70. That's how I play Civ 5.
I look forward to crushing you in Civilization 5.
If you really want to play Civ 5, we can play some Civ 5, but
it'll be a real challenge. The Civ 5 multiplayer is notoriously hard to get working.
That's
with, like,
true.
no
It like
support.
breaks all the time.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had a game with like a bunch of group of friends that's like turn 55, we all give up because we spent an hour trying to get everyone to be able to connect correctly after a desync problem.
Oh my god. A
There
game
is a
with
Civ
Nick
5.
Fuentes and Destiny in Civilization 5. That'd
Oh
be
my God.
incredible.
I played
Holy shit.
I don't
One of my
know if that's a good
favorite-
idea.
Before I get out of here, one of my favorite clips from like the very early days where I had no idea how I was going to stream or like what I was going to do. I was just chilling playing Civ 5 and I was playing oh my god, who was I playing? I was playing what civilization? Norway, I think, or something. And I said something along the lines of, I said, just science and food, boys. We're not getting any culture this game, right? Like, because I was just focusing on science and taking over some people. And someone like clipped that out and just said how white people were made.
That's fucked up.
Science and-
And I was like, just science and food and war, boys. I was like, we're not going for culture. And it was just how white people are made. And I was like, fuck, it's
That's
sad,
pretty
but it's
funny, though.
true.
Now Civ 4 has a base culture system. God, I love Civ 4.
But it was nice. It was nice meeting you. I will. I look forward to doing stuff with you in the future, or at the very least, DMing you about how to set up your fucking Twitch panels, because this shit is gross, girl. You need to get this fixed.
It's not gross. It's incredible.
No, the fact that you don't have a Discord link, but instead you have an overlay with the no.
Okay,
like,
fine.
we
I'll
gotta
link
fix this.
Discord.
You need to. You don't have an about section, like
You understand everything from just looking at me. It's that simple.
it's really not, because I don't think so. First of all, your politics and your philosophy is well beyond the normal Twitch person.
That's true.
Number two, you confuse so many people, and this is an insult and a compliment in and of itself, and I'm sorry, because you pass extremely well. So then people are like, wait, is she what is she like, my comment section was full of people like, nah, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay, guys. Like, so I don't know, I feel like you need an about section at the very least.
Okay. I'll consider it. I'll try to do some like setup stuff. I'm probably gonna shut off the stream for now. But it was actually like, this stream was a lot of fun, so that's good.
Yeah, you got to talk to Last Username and Econ Boy, both people I can't get yet. And I've been on the platform for 8 months networking.
Yeah,
All
no,
right.
Akana Boy just reached out to me, which was really cool.
Yeah, exactly. You lucky
Nice.
bastard.
Feels good.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna pull in last username. Last username. Hello.
Hey, I was just gonna say to Fabian if he wants to talk to me.
Oh, you should definitely message him because he wants to
You
talk
just
to you
messaged
a
him.
lot.
I will.
Okay. Good stuff. Thanks for accepting moderator position in my chat.
I'm happy to. I'm on your Minecraft server.
Oh, cool. What's your username?
That's username.
Oh, I'll connect to it and look now.
This is where the last username name originated.
Incredible. I'm stuck in like a hole in Minecraft.
You're stuck?
I'm just like digging up because I don't remember how to get back.
Oh yeah.
That's when you know you're down bad.
Yep.
It's rough. I got like a bunch
Always
of
just
diamonds though.
dig a new tunnel up.
You got to go on those giga grind set mines where you're turning the ore into bars, so you can turn it into blocks, so you can carry more of it. Because
Oh
you're
my
in the
God.
when you. Yeah, no, that's the real strategy.
That's hardcore, yeah.
Yeah. It becomes pretty agonizing at the end though, because you can only carry like a single stack of everything, so you're constantly popping down a crafting bench to turn it all into blocks again.
Damn stuff.
You know, like you were saying with the with Black Identity, I think the most interesting thing is normally we make like a distinction between like descendants of slaves versus immigrants that came to America willingly and more recently from African countries. But it's really interesting. Obviously, probably one of the most prominent like people in like American history ever that is Black is Obama, who is not a descendant of slaves. His father obviously was from Kenya, as I'm sure we all are now very well aware of. From many years of birtherism. But yes, Obama, thank you. And it's so fascinating how he it almost seems like he's like an adoptive like African American in that sense now. And obviously he's a huge icon too. I mean, John McCain said it best, right? The special significance that this election holds for the descendants of slaves who have struggled so much to get their fair share in this country. And so I always thought that was also really fascinating and sort of like as like a specific case study.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most incredible aspects of American culture is its ability to naturalize and culturally integrate immigrants. Like, a lot of Americans don't appreciate how incredible this is because it's not something that like Japan or China is really able to do. When you've got a 95% like ethnic Han majority and you've got a language that goes back 5,000 years and has all of this like pretension built into understanding the origins of the characters and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then you come to America, whose culture is like widely disseminated. And like in my last job, there was this guy from Nigeria, from like West Africa, and he just seemed like totally American to me.
Yeah, I think Nigerian immigrants, if you select specifically for like Nigerian immigrants, I think they're actually one of the most well-educated groups. Yeah, in all of them in America, which is fantastic. I mean, it's amazing, really.
And like, it's incredible that America's able to take on like these immigrants who are able to offer so much to the country.
Yeah, so, that's why we're a superpower.
Yeah, it's something that like makes me proud, definitely, of being an American.
True.
for all the difficulties that do come with immigration legitimately when it comes to like integrating people culturally. If you want to know a country that does it well, it's definitely America.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really crazy how much our conceptions of what is and isn't American have changed over really what is such a short time. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's some bit that Destiny has where he talks about like in America you're either white or you're not, but in Europe they've got all sorts of different tiers of racism for different kinds of white people. I remember I think it was in Brexit there was actually a big furrow of like anti-Polish racism because there were just a ton of like young Polish men coming over to work jobs in Britain at the time, which was a big source of discomfort among certain people.
I have no idea where the fuck I am in this Minecraft world.
Did you save the chords of your base before you went mining? Oh my god. Well, well,
I'm
of
just
course
gonna-
they're gonna get lost then. That's the basic.
Okay, I'm gonna look around. Fuck. Oh, I see it. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Incredible.
But yeah, and it's also one of those like classic incongruencies that people like to bring up, where like some like American kid will be like, "Yeah, I'm a Slav. I'm Slavic proud, and you know what? I also like Hitler." And it's like, dude, you would have been one of the first people on the
Right.
block.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre. Like the American
Yeah, and
conception
so
of whiteness.
we're just so removed as Americans. We're just so removed from any of those sort of like conceptions. Because I mean, it doesn't feel. I mean, pretty anecdotal, but like I don't think I'm white, and I know a decent amount of white people. I don't think anybody like ever really identifies as like where their roots are from the old country outside of like a joke. Like
I mean,
like it'd be like a maybe for like I don't know, maybe that's just my experience.
I do
and
think
guess,
people identify pretty strongly with like where they came from, but it just has quite a different tone than it does like in Europe, because like if you are French in Europe, right? Your family's French, you can be like ethnically and citizen-wise like French, but in America, your citizenship is American, but you have all sorts of like various ethnicities, and only a very small number of people are like ethnically indigenous to the continent. But I mean, just like going off of this, I think that I was gonna say, like in America, there's like a very unique immigrant culture where like in Chinatowns in San Francisco, you have like the development of like very unique like Chinese American culture, which is specifically made to like emulate what Westerners like might think Chinese culture is like, and like appeal to these like tourists, right? So you have these like gates in like the San Francisco Chinatown, which are a whole cloth construction by Chinese Americans, and it's like that's American culture. Like the gates of Chinatown are not Chinese culture, but like Chinese American culture, or more specifically just American culture. And you see that with like all sorts of ethnic groups, right? Like, St. Patrick's Day is something that is much more popular in America than it is in Ireland.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how the sort of influences of American Irish culture on actual Irish culture.
Right? Where they've like tried to start like emulating that.
Yeah, because I think there are more Irish people in America than there are in Ireland, which is also another really funny statistic. It's kind of like that one statistic, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, where it's what is the largest air force in the entire world? The United States Air Force. What is the second largest air force in the entire world? The United States Navy.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. I guess that is true. I guess it just feels like there are. I guess it would apply more to broadly European, because I definitely think Irish people definitely have a strong identity, but it doesn't really feel like there's many people, at least anymore, that like strongly identify as like, oh yeah, my ancestors were from England, or my ancestors were from like Germany or like Poland, outside of like very sort of like niche case, very sort of like very sort of niche cases where it almost feels like a joke, like it almost feels like a bit.
Yeah,
but that could just be by experience. It's pretty
I think people will like definitely identify with it, and they'll take like DNA tests and whatnot, which I think is interesting. And it's something that like, African American communities don't really have, where, white Americans can say, like I can say like my grandma's a Swedish immigrant. And so, I'm like connected to the Swedish culture through her, and like the things that she would make for us growing up, like some of her decorations and whatnot. But I also, you know, it's not like a serious, like, I don't identify as Swedish per se. I don't have like loyalties to Sweden.
Yeah, I guess it just feels like I definitely agree that like Chinese Americans or like Irish Americans, like those definitely feel like a lot more unique groups. But I feel like it's a lot less true of like Swedish Americans. Like I feel like I don't often like see like see like discussions of like Swedish Americans or like just like a conception of that culture as like a very distinct subgroup in the way that like Chinatown is, for example.
Yeah, well, there's also like a lot less of us. I mean, you have
Yeah,
to go
that's
to
that's
like
probably a big part. Yeah.
some of the northern states have like high numbers of Swedish people, but like in general, we don't have like enclaves like you might have
Yeah.
with like
Yeah,
Chinese, Irish, or
yeah.
Italian
The
Americans.
specific concentration is I think a big effect. It's really crazy. Especially if you're not from certain areas of the country. If you ever look at one of those maps of America that show like the highest amount of like people that hail from another country in certain areas, and there'll be like big chunks of like states like up towards like the Rust Belt, where it's like German or Swedish, and you never really think of those states in that way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think it's because they like, I think especially Swedish and German Americans like really integrated. And it is just like a quirk of, you know, the merging of these cultures that they like very quickly became Americanized.
Yeah, it feels like it's really interesting actually. He's talking about that sort of concentration in specific locations. This is sort of a bit of a tangent, but it's kind of related. Are you very familiar with the the electoral system in Israel?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so this is really fascinating. So in Israel, in order to get a seat in, like, I believe it's called like the parliament, or whatever their legislative body is, you have to get a certain percentage of the vote, right? But this vote it's not in any geographic area. So you can scrap together, I think it's only like, you only need like 2% of the vote across the entire country in order to get one seat in parliament. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's part of the reason why Israel has this crazy political system of like, it's like when Netanyahu lost power, there are all these like infographics trying to explain like, okay, well, here's the coalition, and it's like 30 different like crazy like logos that have like Hebrew on them and stuff like that. And so I always thought that's really interesting. The idea of like these very like specific constituencies that are not like concentrated in communities anywhere, but instead are very, very much spread out. It also kind of reminds me of there's a lot of controversy in Israel between the more secular nation, secular parts of the nation, which is like the majority, versus like the very hardcore Orthodox Jewish sections. Because in Israel there's the draft. And there's a ton of political fighting that happens over religious exemptions to that draft. There's some specific term for it, but essentially there are many Orthodox Jewish boys who are supposed to go to, it's some equivalent of almost like seminary school, where they're supposed to be like where they're going to be in that like sort of 18 to 21 range, right, where normally you're eligible for the draft, but they want to go and like study, and so that was like that's a huge political issue. I don't know how big it is like currently, but I know that historically that's been like a big like sparking point that like the politics there often go back to.
That's an interesting insight. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I just stole it from some video I watched, so you know.
You know what? The best
Everyone
insights are stolen.
Yeah, I'm saying all the insights are stolen. Okay, I'm just honest about the fact that I rip off all of my opinions. Okay, everyone rips it off. Okay, there's some famous anecdote that isn't, or there's some criminally unfamous anecdote that is God, who's the guy who made Terminator? Who is that guy? Oh my God, you're bad at movies too. Come on, someone in chat knows it. Who's the guy who made
Cameron?
Yes, thank you, James Cameron. James Cameron. There's James Cameron, I think, is either for the first Terminator or the second one. Someone asked him, like, what were your inspirations? And he said, oh, these, like, literally contemporary movies and TV shows at the time. And those people sued him and won.
Whoa,
for like,
what?
yeah. And so now when he says, like, oh, I got inspired by, you know, the concept of man and the evolution of humanity, like just these super generic, like, non-answers. And so a lot of people think that, like, the reason he gives those is clearly the last time he said what he got directly inspired by, those people sued him for a decent chunk of change, from what I understand. And yeah, not enough people know that.
That is wild.
Because I think, it's fine, you know. Just there's a great lesson. If everyone should, you know, Destiny likes to say everyone should play poker. Everyone should run D&D, right? Because when you run D&D, you immediately realize everyone is stealing everything, and it's fine. When you rip off your favorite book or movie or TV show to run your D&D campaign, if the players know about it, then it's kind of like, oh well. But they'll still enjoy it. But if they don't know it, they're gonna think you're the most intelligent
You're a
and crazy
genius.
person. Yeah, exactly. So just gotta start watching some like obscure anime intentionally for the purpose of ripping off for D&D.
Yeah, no, I always rip off like Brandon Sanderson's The Stormlight Archive
Yeah,
for my D&D.
yeah. Oh, I remember. One of my friends is planning on running a campaign in like a year or two after his current one is done, and he has preemptively told us all, okay, please do not watch the Wheel of Time TV show. I don't want to say why, okay, but you could probably tell. Please do not watch that. Apparently, the TV show is awful though, so we're good. Oh God, yeah. I don't know how much you follow Brandon Sanderson. I remember there was a stream where because Brandon Sanderson helped finish the Wheel of Time when oh God, not Robert Jordan, because Robert Jordan's the King Killer, right? The Name of the Wind guy. But the guy who wrote the Wheel of Time was this huge sci-fi, or not sci-fi, Jesus Christ, it was this huge fantasy series at the time, and he died before the last novel finished.
Terry
So Brandon's
Pratchett, right?
Yes, Terry Pratchett. Thank you. And his wife, the guy who wrote the Wheel of Time, his wife was his editor, and so he, on his deathbed, like it wasn't like a sudden thing. They essentially selected Brandon Sanderson to be the writer, along with his wife, to put out the last book. Because obviously Brandon Sanderson was like an up-and-coming fantasy writer at the time, and it was the kind of thing where Brandon Sanderson had come up when the Wheel of Time was the biggest like fantasy book ever. So it was like this really cool moment of like now of like almost like a product of that time, bringing it across the finish line. But anyways, so Brandon Sanderson knows the Wheel of Time very well. I think in the live stream when the Wheel of Time show came out, he just was ripping into it. Was talking about like how even he, who doesn't make TV shows, could have adapted the Wheel of Time better than these writers did.
Damn.
I just thought that was hilarious.
That is funny. But yeah, D&D is fantastic. I've played a lot of D&D in my time.
Yeah, I think I am. My group's going through a bit of a cold period right now, cooling off, because we just finished like a 3.5-year campaign.
That's awesome. Though.
Yeah, which I'm pretty happy. I enjoyed running it. It was a blast, but there's a certain attitude where it's like it's nice to be able to like put the book down, you know, now that you've finished it all, and also get onto other things. But yeah, I think I'm literally in like, technically speaking, some of these aren't actively running. I think I'm literally in like 9 D&D games, or some ridiculous, some stupidly high number that I should have never agreed to. But a lot of them don't run, and some of them are like on the back burner. I think some of them are like 1-shots that turn into 2-shots that are paused halfway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I used to run a pretty fun D&D campaign, and like the premise was that like time had been fractured into these like shards, and so every session was like a 1-shot in a different setting, like a different timeline.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so like we had like one shot that was like a western, and another that was like Indiana Jones like delving into the temple, another one that was like cyberpunk, and it was super fun because I could just like every week be like, oh, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. And
yeah, it really is. It's almost liberating to have like a very sort of like laid back game where you can do almost anything and have it be plausible. Compared to having like a very rigid game where it's like, this is the Lord of the Rings and you know what's happening next. So having all those expectations. It's actually kind of similar to something I did in that game. One of the players was like a time wizard type deal, or I think particularly a time sorcerer. He had this ability where he could call a lower level version of himself from an alternate reality. So if they were level 11, he would call like a level 9 character that was him, but like in a different world. So like he was a sorcerer, so like sometimes he'd call a version of himself that's like a barbarian. And then the really cool thing was that after he used this power, there would essentially be this random timer to where he would then get pulled into that world and have to help that alternate version of himself with a combat. And in that combat, there would be a full alternate version of the entire party. So if the time sorcerer calls an alternate, barbarian version of himself, maybe a day later he gets called to help that barbarian and a whole different alternate version of the rest of the party in some other quest or fight, that climactic fight that they're doing.
That's a
and then
super interesting premise.
yeah, and then all the other players would play their own alternate versions of themselves. So, the fighter would be playing a rogue version of himself that's like an archer, and like the warlock would be playing like a cleric and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. I'm just like messing around with my audio settings a little bit.
Yeah, no problem.
I think that's good. I'm like so boomer with all of like the Twitch technology.
But yeah, for all these people in chat that are talking about D&D, okay? Run D&D with your friends. It'll be amazing. You are going to run D&D for your friends, and it's going to be amazing. I know you're thinking, oh my god, I've heard about D&D, but I don't. It's fine, okay? Because here's the secret, folks. None of your friends have played D&D either. So what you're going to do is you'll look back on the first session you run and be like, I can't believe I did that. But in the moment, you and your friends are going to think it's the coolest thing ever. And you will think that you're going to be amazed at how much they like it. Go on YouTube, look up How to Run the Game by Matt Colville. There's this whole long video series. You don't need to watch the whole video series. You need to watch like the first 3 videos, like 40 minutes tops. Okay, you can double speed it. Okay, he talks really slow. All right, you're gonna watch that. That's gonna give you everything you need to do to run an amazing D&D session that you and your friends are gonna enjoy. If you want to play D&D, run D&D for your friends. Just say, listen, motherfuckers, we said we're gonna hang out on Friday. We are gonna hang out on a Friday. You're gonna be playing D&D, and I'm gonna be running. Those videos are all you need. I believe in you. You're gonna do great.
Play D&D. It's good for the soul.
Yeah. It really is one of the best things you can do with like a close-knit group of friends.
It's a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
Prepared to go into the nether. Are you playing Minecraft right now?
I am.
Okay, sweet.
I'm not ready to go into the nether. You're gonna have to go on without me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I believe in you. Actually make sure you get a screenshot of your portal cords once you get in the nether, though. Because if you get lost in the nether, that is like a very easy way to just lose everything you have on you.
I won't get lost.
That is how I lost my first set of diamond armor when I was like 11. I got lost in the nether.
There's no way
I didn't
to
have
get
a screenshot of my portal.
Very easy to get.
I've never been lost
Watch
in
it to the
Minecraft,
mushroom
ever.
forests. Particularly easy to get lost in those.
Yeah, the nether update. That's the kind of thing where I feel like by this point we should have had like 3 of those. Of like that level of update. Because God, yeah, that is a great update. That is a great fucking update. Nether biomes are super cool.
I was saying this in
They're
chat,
different.
but it's Minecraft is a huge game in terms of features and complexity, and all the features interact with each other.
I'm gonna get
So
gold
like
armor first.
adding a feature to this game is hard.
Difficult, yeah.
That's true, but motherfuckers, you're Minecraft. I know you got the money, okay? I know you got the money to hire some people and work on it.
There's some things that money can't buy.
Yeah, that's true. The mythical man hour is weak. Is definitely real, but I have a hard time believing that whatever team Mojang has capped out.
Oh, I'm sure they have by now, for sure.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, yeah,
It just limits how much you can scale.
You can add in,
game development team.
You can add in a polar bear and stuff like that. Yeah.
Last username is a naysayer. He doesn't believe in the Minecraft team like I do.
Yeah. Minecraft team, I support you so much that
Yeah.
I want you to give me more stuff, you stupid fucks.
I
Hurry
have
up.
tremendous admiration for the Minecraft.
And last
team.
username
Just
doesn't believe in you. You
speaking
should
from experience,
not give him stuff.
That it is very difficult to scale up development teams.
Yeah, man. This is a totally unrelated topic. If you guys want to talk about it, it's fine, or if you think it's boring, but it really feels this whole model of the big AAA $60 game that releases every year. This shit has got to be headed out. Surely, I just don't see how they can keep competing. It feels like
they
every
sell
year,
like crazy.
I mean, they sell like they do sell like crazy. I definitely don't think they're all gonna go away.
I mean,
Especially
I
those
think
like
the other thing
those
is they're
FIFA
just
games.
like, when you look at the expected value of a AAA game, there's not a lot of variation. And I think that's a big draw for these companies. Like, you effectively know how much you're going to make because you've had year after year of like, you know, a steady trend in sales numbers. And so when you're looking at like, do I fund this indie project that like might make money or might be a giant hole, like 90% of indie project games are, or do I fund the AAA, you know, franchise that returns like not crazy profits, like it's never going to be a Minecraft, but it does return profits. I think the choice is clear for a lot of executives.
Yeah, it just feels like, and I don't know. This is something people have been saying for a long time. It's a really hard thing to like get to like the get to the heart of, but it really does feel like more and more. It feels like every year, like some AAA game comes out and gets totally panned by everyone and like underperforms. And meanwhile, you have all these. You know, it's not just indie games anymore. You know, the biggest games in the world are AAA forever games that are free to play. You know, you look at like Fortnite or like how Among Us is like a couple bucks to enter, or like League of Legends or Apex. And like World of Warcraft is like one of the biggest games like forever, and it uses a subscription model, and it just feels like, man, that it feels like the more and more it just becomes so. It feels like games are so much more competitive for your money these days, and it really feels like this whole like every year I'm gonna cough up $60 for the next like Call of Duty, and especially when a lot of people just want to hop straight into the multiplayer, the battle royale. Wasn't it? God, was it like Black Zone or Warzone, Blackout or Warzone that was free to play, that you could play without buying like the campaign, like the actual multiplayer? And yeah, look, the most recent Halo campaign's free to play, or sorry, not the campaign, multiplayer. Yeah, multiplayer is free to play. Man, I really wonder what the future holds for AAA video games in that sense, because it really does feel like they keep getting squeezed, and especially the new gaming markets. Like India and China, where these sorts of like free to play or like very low entry cost games that then you pour lots of money into over years and years, like these things like dominate. Where like League of Legends, I think has like 3 or 4 million players in like China alone. Obviously, like South Korea it crushes as well, and India is another big one too. So I don't know. It's just. It really feels like they've got to be going the way of the dodo bird soon enough, like the next 5-10 years.
I could see that, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that we're going to see like a restructuring of the model. That's for certain.
Yeah. It definitely feels like we're in like a transitionary stage right now. Thank you. I'm so proud. But yeah, that stuff is fascinating. And what's so, oh my God, so fascinating too. This is such a stupid nerdy thing, but it's so fascinating how normally with like the $60 game, you're paying for both the campaign and the multiplayer, but then also you're paying $60 up front for the whatever sort of unlock system they have. So you look at like Halo Reach, right? The best Halo game, just so we're all clear, just so we're all on the record. All those unlocks, they were just you could get them pretty easily. They're obviously the highest ends, like the mythic with the lightning head, like that's pretty hard to get, but you just straight up can't pay for them, right? And it's sort of part of it, right? Part of that $60 you're paying for is to not have to go through some really stupid grindy microtransaction type of thing. Then you look at Halo Infinite, and Halo Infinite, it's the multiplayer is free to play, so you know what? I'm okay getting kneecapped at the store. I'm okay with that. I do wish, as a side note, if you're gonna kneecap me though, I do expect there to be, like some good value for it, right? Like I do think a lot of the Halo Infinite skins do have a problem where it's like you're asking $20 for a skin that just isn't good. Presumably, right? If there were good skins, that would be fine. But then the interesting thing is, you can then buy the campaign for $60, and that microtransaction stuff doesn't go away. Still there, even though now presumably you're expecting that more like Halo Reach traditional like unlock experience, like all those old Call of Duties where all those unlocks, I mean, those things popped up. Like you could play like an hour and unlock like half of those games in the multiplayer with all like the ghost improved, like all those different traits and stuff. It's really fascinating, and I gotta wonder also how much it has to do with the fact that AAA games, the cost to make these things have ballooned like 4x, but no company can move off the $60 price point because gamers just won't accept it.
It's sticky. I mean, you see the same thing with like consoles, where people expect a console to cost a certain amount of money, but like PlayStation cannot produce consoles for like the expected price. And so they just produce less, right? It's classic supply and demand.
Yeah, and literally it was PlayStation that like had that giant like everyone got super angry when they announced that, oh guys, on the PlayStation games aren't gonna be $60, they're gonna be like 80 or like 70. Like some super minor thing where it was like, okay, you know, games are more expensive, I understand. And everyone lost their minds. And yeah, I really think the gaming community honestly is to blame for a lot of the stuff where they're not willing to accept a change in the price point, but they still want these mega games like Cyberpunk. And the inevitable result is when those mega games like Cyberpunk do come out, they're buggied as hell because it costs more money and they just don't have the money or the time. And so then all these companies have to go to all these alternate means in order to do it, right? Like the day one patches, right? Where games now, you know, when they ship out the physical disc, that is not the completed game because they know that they're going to have a day one, like ridiculous 30 gig patch that, you know, some poor bastard who has like 1 meg down on his like 360 is going to have like the entire day at work, like running to try and like get it in time to actually play.
Yeah, and it creates this really weird dynamic where like you have scalpers who are like in the market effectively like taking over some of like the supply surplus, or like the producer surplus, and by just like reselling things at probably the price that the console should have released at. And so they're collecting like all of the revenue that like PlayStation should really get, in order to like more effectively balance out, you know, the really try to like more effectively discover the actual price equilibrium.
Yeah, and and I think the consoles has a little bit more of a wrinkle where there's some decent economic incentives for someone like Sony to want PlayStation to be selling PlayStations at a loss to get them into the ecosystem. It's kind of like that classic, like age-old question about YouTube, where no one is really sure if YouTube actually makes money, or if Google is just running at a loss because they want the internet video distribution thing to be Google. And I think you actually, I mean, tons of these startups that like it feels like everyone's used are like known for running a loss, like Netflix and Uber and all these things.
It's very
and
much
like
the Silicon Valley like business model is to just like acquire users at like any rate.
Yeah, exactly. But meanwhile, games can't afford to do this. The games are still very much like, we made this product for this much. We need to get this money back. And so it feels like these companies are forced to go through all these back channels where, yeah, you did buy the Halo Infinite campaign at $60, but we're still giving you the free-to-play microtransaction because this game shouldn't cost $60. It should cost $100, and we need to get that extra 40 somewhere. Or the fact that, yeah, Halo Infinite, we're still developing it, right? Because we couldn't make the game in the allotted time because it costs more money than we're charging for. So we're going to have to degrade the quality of the product in terms of like when it's actually, the deliverables are actually coming out. I think it's all super fascinating how the space, how like video game pricing is evolving in the space as a whole.
Definitely. I think it'll make for a really interesting economic case study.
Yeah, I can't. Someday someone's going to have to defend their PhD dissertation in economics about why Fortnite was able to take over in developing third world gaming markets.
Absolutely. Just go to a village. Oh my God, I don't know where a village is.
What are you looking for?
Sheep. I want to breed sheep, not with each other. I want to breed sheep with each other.
I was about to say, whoa. You got a Mr. Mooten moment in the building. See, that's the thing I don't get, because Dan does not play into the jokes that he gets made fun of, but Mooten does. Like Mooten, there was a period of time where Mooten would make jokes about fucking his own mom during League. It's just why. It's just I say why, but I mean the answers are in front of me. This is truly what playing League of Legends does to an MF.
It rots your brain.
Holy shit! I'm up good though today at League. I'm up bigly. Got promoted to gold.
I think I messaged Steven a little bit about League of Legends. I was just like, I have no idea what this game is, but
he'll take.
My
He
entire
will wisely
understanding is
tell
that,
you.
like,
He'll wisely tell you to stay away.
Yeah, I think I said that like all I understand is that like junglers are terrible and they need to go bot lane more.
True.
And he was like, "That's so accurate." Yeah, you know.
Yeah, that is absolutely accurate. Yeah, the League is it is certainly something. It is I think the thing that makes League really compelling is there's something to be said for being part for the communal aspect of forever games. I think shut up, Kafal. I think there's something to be said for communal games and like that shared experience and that shared sense of community that you don't really get with a lot of other games.
Mhm.
I don't know how many people remember this, but
It's
back
shared
in the
trauma,
day,
suffering together.
yeah, but I mean, there's definitely part of that. But I think there's something they said where it's like when someone says like, "Oh, I play League," you're like, "Okay, who do you main?" And
Yeah.
they say like, "Oh, I main Zed," and you're like, "You son of a bitch!" And like you start laughing and like making fun of each other, or like, or like if they say something respectable and you're like, "Oh, we could," and you could do like the Predator like arm grab meme where it's like, "Oh, you play respectable champion too, we can bond over hating Fizz."
Mm.
I don't think it is. I don't think Counter-Strike is the same way. Someone in chat says you can just play Counter-Strike because Counter-Strike doesn't have. I've played a lot of Counter-Strike, but Counter-Strike doesn't have that evolving experience, right? You know, you can't go to a Counter-Strike player and be like, "Remember the first patch of the Rune Mastery rework?" and be like, "Oh my god!" Like the closest you could come for Counter-Strike was oh god, what was the meta where people were taking where a rifle finally beat the AK? This was like late 2019, 2020. Does anyone remember? There was a period in Counter-Strike where one, especially in the pro scene, one gun became way more popular than the AK out of like nowhere for like the first time ever. Yes, the Krieg, yeah, or the R8. Yeah, R8, there was the R8, but yeah, there was also the Krieg. The Krieg was the one I was thinking of. There are those, and I just think Counter-Strike has a lot less of those. And then I just think there's something to be said for the gameplay. League, when you're winning, it is like nothing else, and when you're losing, it's like nothing else.
Why
No,
do you
I think it
that
was the
is?
Krieg, yeah.
About like the winning and the losing.
I don't know. It's you'd have to get some psychology person to like do a deep dive and then not have any good takeaways because psychology moment. But I don't know. It's just something about it. They really have perfected the maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's because of the buy-in because there's a lot of. I think there is a real sense of there's a absolute real sense of satisfaction for League for finally getting to like the for finally shitting on someone, right? Like if there's a champion you play that has like a really hard matchup and you're already using your permaban on Yasuo or Fizz or Kiana, right? And so you like to play Galio, and playing into like a Lucian mid, you know, that's just going to be rough. Finally being able to navigate that system, I think there is a deep sense of reward that comes with that because there is a lot of depth to the League systems and trying to, like you. Not a week goes by on the League subreddit that you don't see some post of like X champion, and X champion is always some like universally like hated champion like Kiana or Vayne top. Like there's a Vayne top, like I think there's one for Vayne top right now on the subreddit, and it's X champion gets rightfully shit on, and all the comments are like, "Yes, I vicariously lived through this. Thank you," and everyone's like, "Yeah, finally, we gave them what they deserve." So I think it almost plays. I think that community aspect almost plays like a sports, like sports. You have your team, right? You play AD assassins in the mid lane, so you absolutely hate top laners and ADCs, and you love shitting on ADCs. Or you play an ADC, so you hate junglers and AD assassins from the mid lane. Or you play anybody and you hate top laners that can go 1-5 and pop off a 1v5 against the entire team. I think there's definitely like a tribalistic like sports team type attitude to it as well. That plays into it as well.
Yeah, I will say that like I definitely had the same experience talking to a Kana boy about like Hearthstone, where he was like, you know, I played like Secret Paladin, and I'm like, fuck you, motherfucker! Like I played against Secret Paladin, and that
or
was
like
cancer.
Yeah, or if there are any Magic players in the chat, we could all just fuck blue control players. God, fuck blue control players. They'll tap out for 1 mana to play like a Soul Ring, and then end with all their land, all their mana, like tap, like readied up and like good. Oh my, yeah. See, we got a Riley Reigns player right here, and see, I'm smiling even though I hate playing against blue players because there is that sense of community and like friendly like banter and rivalry to it. So I guess that I think that's definitely a big part of it.
I mean, I definitely think that's like one of the nicest things about, you know, building community through games and really developing that shared, you know, sense of struggle and experience.
Yeah, Yeah, the thing I was going to say earlier is I don't know how many people are had experience with this, but a lot of games back in the day had server browsers, like TF2 or Counter-Strike. Right before there was matchmaking to automatically get you in, a lot of games, even up until like recently, like 2011, and I think Team Fortress 2 still has a community browser, and there would be your servers where there would be like a rotating cast of characters, almost like a high school lunch table where you don't know exactly who's going to be there, but they're just like a nice pool of regulars. That you would go on and play with, and you'd have relationships, and people would have reputations. Honest to God, I think it's kind of the same in certain Twitch chats, like fucking DGG, like all the characters of like DGG chat, and that adds a lot to the experience. Like when you hear about like NNN or like Four Kings and stuff like this, like having a rotating cast of characters. And I think probably like Destiny's stream itself also kind of plays into this, where you have that all these rotating casts of characters that make it more interesting when there's interplay between them, even if you're just sort of watching from the sidelines. So yeah, I definitely think that's a big part of it with League.
Dan being like obsessed with the Omnivore drama.
yeah, exactly, right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Fuck, I just want sheep.
Are you still looking?
Oh, I found a sheep. Oh
there
my
you go.
God.
Don't kill it. You need two.
Yes, dude. God, I'm such
Do you have a lead?
Holy shit. No.
Okay. You
Oh
can
my
you
God,
just
I
bait
found
him with
multiple
wheat.
sheep.
Okay, there you go.
This is the greatest moment of my life.
Yeah, you can
Come here.
grab sweet and pull him along.
Yes. No, yeah, I remember when I was younger, I would like play Minecraft servers with people, and there was definitely a sense of community. Like, you would see the same people all the time. You just like naturally made friends with them, and that was definitely like the most special part of playing the game, and like competing with people in friendly ways and whatnot.
Yeah, in so many games now, you just can't do that like on a mass scale. And so I think like this sort of like this like having these sort of like almost like teams in the game, right, that you like identify as like stand-ins for specific persons, right? So like you don't know, right, like it's you're not going on one specific server in League, so you don't know this one guy. But I bet any League player in the chat knows the Yasuo player base very well, and like that's almost like a stand-in for an actual person, where it's like there's certain behaviors attributed to them, a certain style of play, and it's the source of like tons of jokes in the community as well.
That's definitely interesting.
This game was pretty much my whole life for several years.
What game?
This one, Minecraft.
Oh, Minecraft. Yeah, Minecraft's a classic.
Yeah.
Like all the way up to my job, eventually. First I played it, and then I made sort of got involved with like a circle of people who played a lot and made videos a lot. So I became a video, and I got a job at like a Minecraft server network as a developer. I've done that for a while.
Yeah, I think RuneScape was another big one for a lot of people. Their first one, because back in the day, Minecraft. There were a lot of like home office computers that actually couldn't run Minecraft. It wasn't like super challenging, right? But a lot of these were just like word processing machines, and it was back in the days when every web page didn't require you to have like 8 gigs of RAM because the front end developer thinks it looks really cool. So a lot of computers couldn't. So I remember because I remember when I first tried to play Minecraft, I got so upset when I was like 9 or something because it wouldn't work on the computer. So I went back to playing RuneScape. And just running around and basically doing nothing. It's really crazy to look back on the amount of games you played as a kid that you have so many fond memories of, where you didn't actually play the game, you just like messed around with and did stuff with them. Like I remember Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Me and my friends had a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I don't think we ever played a single. Yeah, I don't think we ever played a single game of Yu-Gi-Oh. And it wasn't like we wanted to just like collect them either. It wasn't like a collection thing. We would like just like use them almost like action figures, where we'd like say like, "Oh, my blue eyes white dragon like destroys you! Oh my god!" Like just like yelling and screaming at each other. We were like 8. I think it's a lot. So it's kind of like that meme where like you'll someone will like buy like a $1,000 bed for their cat, and then the cat will be sleeping in the cardboard box that it came in.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think like for me, I played a bunch of like Adventure Quest worlds when I was younger, just because like I discovered World of Warcraft and I was like super entranced by that game. But I didn't actually have like the money to play it. So I just like chose some random like web-based RPG browser. And I was so bad at it. But like I would just like run around and like, get armor and stuff. And
yeah, I remember I couldn't buy, I didn't have the money to buy RuneScape Premium, and I think I spent like half of my time in RuneScape trying to find a way to glitch into the premium section of RuneScape without paying for it.
right. And like the rumors like go around, people like
yeah,
spread,
go follow the wall in the wilderness. So like my level 5 character running past like the place where you farm like dragons, desperately hoping, because that's the other thing. I wasn't even trying to glitch it. That's actually a misrepresentation. I was like convinced that there was a secret way that the devs put in for only the smart players. something stupid like that. Oh man.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Pede Joe, Discord replaced the rotating cast of people in random servers. Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people. They have like a Discord server that has, maybe like 100 people tops in it, and they don't know everybody. They'll probably know like there'll probably be like a group that's like the regulars on it, but there's still like a rotating cast of characters of people who like occasionally jump in and stuff. I think that's definitely true as well. It's really interesting as to see like how people like the sort of the digitization, I guess, of like social spaces, right? Because a lot of, especially with the pandemic, with a lot of people no longer like going to school like in person and stuff. Because I think there's a real craving, and I really think that's a lot of where Twitch comes from. I think a lot of people watch Twitch not because they want some crazy engaged, highly produced content. They just kind of want like a place to chill. I think like Mizkif streams, or like a lot of Mizkif success comes from that kind of thing, where it's almost just like a lunchroom like table, like in the cafeteria, of like people cracking jokes and talking about whatever the drama is of the day and stuff like that, but not really actually like playing games or doing anything like that. And same thing with the TV shows. I think that's also where the TV shows come from. It's just like a chill thing to watch with like the people that you want to be watching it with.
I think especially because like a lot of these people, like Hassan Piker, the way that he markets himself is like this very cool like person that you can take advice from. And so like when you watch a TV show with him, it's like you're watching like a TV show with like the cool kid, right? And when he gives insights, it's like, oh yeah, this is like socially validating that this thing that I also like is good or enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, like that's where all like the parasocial Andy stuff like comes from with streamers as well, is because I really do think there's a big like social component to it. It's not just like you're watching a video. There's something more to it than that.
Right.
But I guess to be fair, that's always been sort of somewhat a part of like media, like people getting obsessed with like celebrities and stuff, like
but Twitch just takes it to another level, because you have this interaction with the
I really think it like takes it and like juices it up to like 11. True, this map does look like Canada.
It's so
Pacific
cold.
Northwest. Base Pacific Northwest, best part of the country.
It's been night for so long too.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I remember I was just walking around waiting for it to be daytime, and
I'd live in a cave and then.
Right.
Dude, just like this supposed to be my escape from reality. Okay, let's come on.
Damn, hell yeah. Taff is talking to me and only me. That's true.
That's so true.
Anyone who's thinking that right now, it's true.
You mean the one person who's thinking?
Yeah,
that
the
right
one
now.
person who's thinking that.
Okay, just wanted to check in. True, there is constant rain too. God damn. PTSD for any of the people from Vancouver. is that like situation been resolved where Vancouver got like completely cut off by like some giant mudslide? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Remember this? Like I feel like this. Yeah, there was some crazy thing where Vancouver, which is like it's like the biggest city on the west coast in Canada, which isn't saying much. But anyways, there was like a mudslide that took out like the highway to it, and like apparently it was like cut off by a road. I feel like that would have taken like way longer to resolve. Yeah, I guess if nobody knows what I'm talking about, then I'm not gonna get an answer. I'll have to go find it out myself.
I think that one thing people don't appreciate is like how insane natural disasters have been for like most of human history, and how much we've like, tamed those things, because they still are like incredibly destructive to like human commerce, human ecology and whatnot, right, in the modern day with all of our tools. And the wilderness, nature, is something that's like man has constantly been in opposition to, and it's only very recently where like mankind's actions can totally change the landscape of our environment, or like cause widespread ecological change.
Yeah, in Japan, they have housing in Japan is really interesting because Japan has, I think, one of the biggest construction sectors of like any like developed nation, despite the fact that they have like an aging and even dwindling population. Because in Japan, houses are seen as very disposable, and houses are constantly being torn down and rebuilt. In fact, it's kind of like looked. I don't want to say looked down upon, because that's not the right way of putting it, but it's like people prefer to buy an area and build a new house than live in a house that's used, right? The idea of like a used house, the way that we think of like used cars, which results in this huge. It's one of the many reasons why Japan has much better zoning laws than America. But another big part of it is that every once in a while in Japan, every 5 or 7 years, or at least according to the article I read about this, much better technology comes around for building houses to make them more resistant to earthquakes. So every 5 or 7 years, the Japanese government will come in and say, hey, all these houses need to be torn down and rebuilt because we've got better earthquake technology now. And so that's a huge source for old houses getting torn down and modernized or made more dense or adjusted to whatever the current needs of the zoning in that area are, which I just thought was really interesting as well.
Yeah, we're definitely shaped by our environment and trying to manage nature, which is always constantly. I mean, we're just like these organisms, these specks that have happened to become populating this rock in space. And the rock in space and its natural environment is, totally indifferent to our survival.
Oh my God, this cave update's insane. Holy shit,
right?
I was
They're
underestimating.
massive.
Yeah, I was under. Oh my God.
Did you go up on the mountain yet?
Yeah, that was also really
and there's
crazy,
also a cave up there.
Yeah, wow. I've never had a cave like this. Jesus Christ, they really. Damn. Anyways, yeah, the housing is in Japan. It's also really interesting because as a result, in Japan they have almost no really interesting historic, or I should say no, but they have much less historically preserved areas. I remember a friend of mine who's really into history, who has a PhD in history, went to Japan to I think it was part of some sort of history conference or something. But essentially, he was going there and he met with some of the historians from a Japanese university, and he told them that they asked him, we want to show you around Japan. What are your interests? And one of the interests he put down was he really likes historic sites. And they were like, oh, we've got all these great historic sites, and they ended up taking him to basically what were a bunch of just normal Victorian homes, the kind of thing that you would wouldn't even stand out in a typical suburb in certain parts of America. And it was just really funny because to them this was look at all these amazing historically preserved sites, whereas that seems much more mundane and average to us just because there's much less historic preservation going on there.
Wow, I would have never expected that to be the case.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. Japanese history, especially post World War II, is super, super interesting in terms of. I feels like not enough people just have it internalized in their brain that we occupied and ran the government of Japan for a decent chunk after. Wrote their constitution. It's part of the reason why baseball is so big over there, is because literally soldiers brought baseball over. And Japan, I think, is actually the second biggest place in the world for baseball after America because of that reason.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
really.
think that like,
And how MacArthur basically just ran their country for a while.
right.
Like, holy shit! Imagine having a country run by MacArthur. What the fuck?
I mean, I think that like one thing that really fascinated me about China is that I had this realization a few years ago that there was this entire like culture that for much of human history was like the largest economy and
Yep.
the most populous country on earth. And I knew, almost nothing about its history, right?
Yeah, and they very much viewed themselves, and frankly, there's an argument for rightly so, view themselves as like the center of everything.
Right.
Right,
Zhongguo.
the entire Silk Road was about going to be able to the privilege essentially to be able to buy their goods, and then obviously I'm sure you know like the whole concept of the century of humiliation in China that they are taught that in their schools where everything that happens sort of I think like from like the 1800s on with the subjugation of China and sort of the departure from that sort of system where China was arguably the center of the world in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I mean, like the term that China uses for itself is Zhongguo, which is like the Middle Kingdom.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Fun
That's actually
fact:
really
the
interesting.
term for America is Miguel, which is like beautiful country.
Oh,
Kind of cute.
maybe we can. You know what? Maybe we can work things out after all.
Yeah. I'm gonna
But
make some shears so I can make a carpet.
you're not gonna make a bed first.
Well, if you make shears, you can use them to like get in and out of like the pens.
Oh yeah. Where you put the carpet on top of yeah.
Yeah, one of
Yeah,
the
see, that's one of those
baskets.
new tricks that I'm just never going to be able to remember because I'm old school.
Oh my god, someone stole my goddamn iron. Pretty sure.
Wait, really?
I think so. Or I'm just misplacing it. I'm pretty sure it was stolen though.
Okay. Well, dude, if you're gonna steal from someone, don't steal from the
Motherfuckers.
person who runs the server.
God damn it.
Don't look at me.
Gonna have to get an ender chest and just hoard everything in there.
Self-sufficient anarchist. I need to steal everything.
Yeah, the
Alright. Time to force breed these sheep.
it's fucked up.
It's great because we're gonna get lots of wheat. Are you building? Oh, Riley Rains is building something.
Oh yeah, and I remember what I was going to ask about. Have you do you know anything about the Boxer Rebellion in China?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, that part is super. So there's this one specific period or like event inside the Boxer Rebellion that I find really interesting, which I think the technical term is like the siege of the diplomatic quarter, which is so the Boxer Rebellion. Just for anybody who doesn't know, the basic gist of it is that at the time China was essentially run by like a government that was like put in place by I think like the British, and I think like a couple other Western countries had like some input, which I think was spurred on by the Opium War when the British wanted to sell this hard drug opium to the Chinese people, and the Chinese government banned it because they didn't want their people on drugs, very understandably, and so the British literally went to war to force them to open their markets. Actually, very similar to how I never realized this before, but very similar to the opening of Japan, where America rolls up and says, you have to open up and let us trade with you, or we're going to start killing people. But essentially, the Boxer Rebellion was a sort of very nationalist uprising against this to try and restore control. And the first place they go to is Beijing, obviously, because it's the capital. And they take the city, and there is the diplomatic quarter of the city where all the embassies were and the embassy staff. It gets they essentially like lock it down. And the guards for the small, each of these embassies, right, has like a small military force guarding it. All these military forces essentially banded together, right? So the French soldiers, the German, the Japanese, the American soldiers that were all guarding their own little embassies essentially formed like a force together to hold down the quarter of the city that all these embassies were located on. And I think they actually held out the entire time until the Western army that was sent to put down the rebellion and restore their sort of domination of China at the time relieved them. And it's this almost like truth is stranger than fiction moment of like all these different embassy like guard staffs forming this force and holding out in the center of the city. Like it feels like something almost out of a movie.
Right.
And there's these songs called 99, I think it's called 99 Days in Beijing that are based, there's a movie about it. And I think the song comes from the movie. I don't think it was actually like a war song at the time, but in the movie or in the song, I'm assuming it's from the movie, they have different versions of the song for all the different nationalities that were at the quarter. So there's like one in English for the Americans and the British. Then there's one in Japanese that's sung by like Japanese, that has like different vocals and instruments. There's one in German. There's an Italian one. I think there might even be a Spanish one. It's really cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Feels good. This Minecraft server is popping off.
Based. Oh yeah, no, OnlyFacts TV. Yeah, there's no doubt that, I mean, the Boxer Rebellion, I mean, no doubt they did some fucked up stuff, but I mean, it's very understandable that you would want your country being run by a literal foreign government for the express purpose of letting them sell hard drugs to your citizens. No doubt. I mean, the Boxers were very nationalist and also like racist and xenophobic, but I mean, that's just sort of unfortunately, that's just sort of par for the course at the time.
Right. I think also like a lot of Americans don't quite appreciate how xenophobic and nationalist and racist a lot of other countries are. Like, especially if you go to like China or Japan.
Yeah.
These countries are like, you know, like there's no word in Chinese for like white people that doesn't have like sort of slur connotations.
Yeah, it's really tough because you don't want to say like, oh, all these other countries are so much more racist than America, into like give any sort of credence or excuse to like racism here, but it really just is like there's just no comparison to a lot of other countries in the world. And especially you wouldn't get outside of racism and get into things like, you know, exception of like gay people, LGBTQ plus people, or disabled people, where or their indigenous populations, where there's only a couple other places in the world that come close to America, and they're basically just like most of like the English speaking parts of the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Western Europe. Because even in Europe, I mean, you only need to go as far east as like Poland before stuff starts to get a little sketch.
I mean, not even Poland. It's like the way that like the French people will talk about gypsies. Like, goddamn.
Yeah, that's true. There's some classic meme about Europeans lecturing Americans on racism versus Europeans when they see a gypsy.
Right. I don't know if you saw this, but there was like some drama on Twitter where like Indian nationalist Twitter discovered like a tweet by some like black dude. It's just like a video of like an Indian club, and some black guy on Twitter is like, damn, you know it smelled crazy in there. And
yes, I do remember
Twitter,
this.
Like,
That was very crazy. India is such a fascinating society,
right,
and especially with all the immigration they have to America and also Canada as well, and yeah, all the different special kinds of inter-Indian racism is with the caste system, and then also just the different ethnic groups in India, because India is a massive fucking place with so many different groups of people that identify as different groups. a really interesting factoid that not enough people know. Do you know what the largest terrorist group in the world is?
I don't. What is it?
It is the communist revolutionary Naxalites that operate in East India, that are a violent split off of the original Indian Communist Party. That are actually quite. I don't know if I would use the word like effective, but like I would almost harken them towards like the IRA, where it's like they're not like nothing to sniff at. Like they are like an active presence in certain areas and certain provinces, and like attack like industrial centers, and are part of the reason why parts of East India are still very underdeveloped industrially. Is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight.
And then and speaking of all the people in India, and then when you get to like the border, like in Kashmir with Pakistan and China as well, or when you get to all the different enclaves and exclaves on the border with Bengal, or Bangladesh, sorry, Jesus. Because Bangladesh, another thing, not enough people know, Bangladesh was literally called East Pakistan, was part of Pakistan up until very recently.
And of course, they were like a totally different like ethnic and religious.
Oh yeah. It was just a straight up thing. Like Pakistan was just like straight up like colonized them, essentially. And quite literally, when the Bangladeshi finally had enough and tried to undo it, the fucking the Pakistani government just started genociding them straight up. And especially targeted intellectuals, which was a massive source of like, almost like in Cambodia, where there you can literally feel the socioeconomic implications of all the like people with degrees and their families being killed off in one generation. Just cripples the country.
But now Bangladesh has like really successfully transitioned into like a manufacturing economy.
Yeah, it almost kind of. I know a lot of people like to compare it to South Korea in terms of that sort of transformation. And man, it's just really unfortunate because the border with Bangladesh that India has, I think it's like the longest border wall in the world or something. It's crazy. And if you actually ever zoom in on like Google Maps or something on the Indian and Bangladesh border, there are like enclaves within enclaves within enclaves, where like there's a little bit of Bangladesh that is not touching any parts of Bangladesh. That's inside India. But that part of India is also inside Bangladesh. Like literally like nesting doll. Yeah, like nesting doll, because like they were trying to like preserve like literally down to like the block all these different like families for that, like identified as like Bangladeshi versus identified as Indian. And you think they'd have a much better relationship given the fact like the Indian government is the one that intervened and helped put a stop to the Bangladeshi genocide, but it is not.
I'm gonna head out. Thank you, Flo Trace, for like making the last hour interesting.
Problem. Yeah, it's fine. I feel so special getting to be on the stream and talk. So
yeah,
it was very interesting. I really enjoyed talking about those things.